Hello everyone, and welcome back to Detective Brooks. Now I know a lot of you use these videos to sleep, so before you drift off I thought it would be a fun idea if everyone can leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world. Also like and subscribe if you are enjoying the case. Right, let's get comfy and relax and let's begin. Story 1. Early on in August 15th, 2012's morning, a Toronto Star Canada reporter was walking along the Credit River's edge outside the city to take pictures. First of the dawn, stopped suddenly. He was strolling along the riverbed and smelled strongly. Not the usual fishy smell from dead animals. This was quite odd and suspicious. His head went back right away to the horrific murder case from not too long ago. Just 3 months before, Chinese overseas student Lin Jun was killed and dismembered. His keen professional sense led him to decide to investigate something felt to be unusual. More. After a protracted search, he found a gray plastic bag laying on a sandbar by the river here. That terrible sting came from this bag most definitely. He called the local police right away, but he hesitated to personally open the bag. When the police got there and opened the bag, the graphic sight shocked them. Inside was a rather worn-out human foot. They gathered more than 50 police fast to cover the area and widen the search area. They built from the center point where the first body part was found. A 3-mile wide search area methodically covering every nook and cranny. Their efforts paid off when, by the next afternoon, they successively found another foot too. Hands and a human head placed at several angles over the area. The body parts looked absolutely horrible after days of water soaking. Their swelling and breakdown had made them hardly visible, leading even to the most experienced forensic experts in Toronto suffer with vertigo and nausea. But, under heavy duty, they quickly regained their cool and maintained their important studies. At last they confirmed that the head and these limbs belonged to the same person. There will on the gender and age of the victim, depending on the toenail polish and bone structure came from. 35 to 45 is the range. Police concluded this victim's head had more than 30 cuts was a sign of a homogeneity once more. Then they began to reconstruct the skull for the completely twisted face. This enabled the victim to quickly come to identify herself. 41-year-old Lu Guanhua was a Fujian, China immigrant. She strolled by. Before the crisis, she was running Scarborough's massage parlor Forget-Me-Not. Toronto police began interviewing those closest using accepted methods of murder investigation pertaining the victim. On this list, Lu Guanhua, Lu's son, ranked first. Though first dubious of the son's actions, the detectives couldn't rule out all the options. Though rare, they recalled cases of young children killing their parents abroad. That was not out of the ordinary. They so carefully and fairly questioned Lu Guanhua. Lu Donghao was 21 this year. Born in China during Lu's first marriage, he was her son. 6 years into their marriage, Lu split from her first husband. 2 years later, she wed another man and produced a second son. Possibly living in extreme poverty, she could afford to pay the fine for a second. So she left late night with her older son. They left Fujian for Taiwan and then from there for Thailand. Still under threat, they then shot straight for Canada. This woman was indeed a woman of will. She tore her passport without second thought, then walked into Canada and headed to the immigration body. She performed emotionally there, crying as she related the struggles she had gone through. And her son had suffered in China, claims of persecution, unlawful detention, even harsh beatings. Her performance was so remarkable that even the immigration officials, used to all kinds of horrible events, found moving effect. Stories convinced me absolutely. They found her story to be quite moving as well. Lu thus received not only a priority refugee visa, but also considerable financial support coming from Canada's government. After years of non-stop work, Lu purchased a nice townhouse and made it a cozy refuge. By leasing some rooms into a regular source of income. From a poor immigrant, she had become a landlady. But her character seemed to have a drawback accompanying this success. Lu insisted on her son hiding to maintain her attractive single woman appearance. His real nature She made him act like any other regular tenant and totally forbade him from phoning. Her mother frontally turned to face others. During this period, she dated several men from different backgrounds and races, so generating a varied set of and a complex network of interactions. Not happy to stop there, she expanded her commercial activities by buying a massage parlor from a friend with immigrant from Fujian background. One could say Lu's life had become rather rich and vivid. Dong Hao told the police that on the day his mother disappeared, her boyfriend Kenneth Grotsky had paid a house visit. Lu then left the house declaring she had to go out to talk business. Not since then had he seen his mother. Dong Hao claimed that his mother had missed events marking homecoming for several days. But this time, not long after she left, Kenneth called furiously claiming that his mother gone missing. This really caught him as quite odd. Later he had brought it up to the police. 1 week before Lu disappeared, her boyfriend Kenneth reported to the police that she moved after he and Guang Hao got into a heated argument on the 30th of the previous month. Outsourced. Still, they had stayed in constant touch. Lu claimed she stopped answering after having to go out to talk business until August 10th. Her phone independent of his calling frequency. Kenneth also mentioned that when he couldn't find her, he had called her son. This was confirmed by earlier inquiries of Dong Hao. Sensibly responsible, the police decided to visit Kenneth's house to inform him of Lu's death. Also curious to know if this man was hiding anything else. Police knocked on Kenneth's door. Another man unlocked it. Surprised if this was Kenneth's house, the cops asked. The man nodded. As the police kept asking his name, the attractive man asked back who they were seeking. Considering the police claimed they were looking for Kenneth. Who was he? Looking at the cops, the man said, "I'm his boyfriend." This beautiful man, who formerly lived with Kenneth, went by Hilbert. Actually, Lu's boyfriend had another partner as well. He was bisexual, concurrently in a relationship with a boyfriend and a girlfriend. Besides, these three shared a house. The police asked Hilbert to call Kenneth, asleep in the bedroom. When he learned of Lu's death, Kenneth seemed quite hopeless. Tears in his eyes, he hugged Hilbert next to him. Hilbert murmured, lightly brushing his back. "Don't cry," he said. Directly to the point, the police asked how Lu and you got along. Deeply breathing, Kenneth said he came across Lu in the massage parlor. Before Lu, he was gay and had never had a girlfriend. Once after a fight with his boyfriend, not the attractive one standing here, he was in a bad attitude and happened by accident in Lu's massage parlor. From the first view, Lu knew something different about Kenneth. Her great experience and keen eye enabled her to spot the innocence and inexperience. Given his behavior, especially in relationships with women, this young man seems to be. Lu created completely new work using her refined techniques and superb massage skills, and unexpectedly interesting interactions for Kenneth. He thus began to visit Lu quite regularly rather quickly. More than her massage techniques, her personality drew him in. Kenneth almost visited Lu's store every day. Lu also had gifted hands. She even shaped a gay man. She was ignorant, though, that her boyfriend was not merely someone who might change his sexual behavior. Orientation starting straight and working toward gay. She so argued with Kenneth rather a lot. After every argument, he would get her several presents to satisfy her and help with debt payoff. Once some time passed, Kenneth told Lu to live with him since his house was small, saying, later on, for business it would be more practical. Lu agreed as too she wanted to be with this single man. Of course, Kenneth's house also included Hilbert. Thus the three of them lived together in a dubious, confused arrangement. Kenneth said he paid the money just to help Lu buy the massage parlor. She is seeing her dream of running a company come true. Lu was the owner, but she only gave work top priority and neglected to consider to distance oneself. She still frequently strayed from owner and directly serviced customers many times. Consumer, billing extra for special offerings. Lu and Kenneth thus got into arguments quite a bit. On July 30th, they entered yet another dispute on this. Lu left feeling a lot of rage. Later on, Kenneth went looking for Lu, apologizing and handing her a purse. Lu could, he also said, sell the massage parlor, go back home quietly, and keep on sharing a good life with him and the three others. Clearly ready to pay her back off was Kenneth. Lou agreed. She was not dumb either. Kenneth was quite obsessed. After all, having a house and someone to support her wasn't really remarkable. Early the next morning, Kenneth and Hilbert drove, once they had a grasp, to Port Hope, more than 60 miles away, for a major event. Those days, the police did not entirely embrace these ideas. Still, Kenneth hinted at something. Lou wanted to disappear from the massage parlor just before it was sold, wanting to bring some parlor electrical appliances to her boyfriend Zhang Chuanqi's house. Kenneth said he had seen Zhang Chuanqi before, that he was not very tall or skinny. Lou might have visited Zhang's house that day and had been killed by him, he reasoned. The cops found Dong Hao to be suspicious. Dong Hao suspected Kenneth. Now Kenneth suspected Zhang. Though they were being guided exactly, what more could the police have done? Apart from Kenneth and Zhang, Lou was also involved in activities linked with many more partners. The police also found themselves confused given her rather sophisticated social circle. They had to start seeing things Kenneth's way. Then they quickly went to check into it at Zhang's house. Under police presence, he was quite cool. 39 years old, he said he was from Shanghai and had once worked as a chef on a Chinese ocean-going capacity ship. On a dark and stormy night, the ship was docking in Montreal. He jumped ship without any thought. One was listening, just chewing a slice of bread. Then he headed 310 miles toward Toronto. Then he began his own show. He said, facing the immigration officials, basically that he was a Catholic, badly mistreated. Concerning China, according to a well-known Chinese proverb, an army can lose its general, but, stressing his consistency in values and faith, a man cannot be deprived of his will. He said he had to save half a year to have enough for the sea crossing, proving his will and sacrifice for Canada's values. The immigration officials not only approved his story, but also really connected to it. The reason behind providing him the necessary paperwork and even a compliment. Later he even brought his mother over. Toronto became their hometown as a result. Zhang said he visited Lou since he leased her a house. He said at that point Lou had a significant black boyfriend and also had a girlfriend. Lou did, though, often tempt him. Over time, they moved near one another. Not long after Lou began to develop pregnancy, she said she was ready to break off from Zhang, and he had to reply quickly. Black partner. Zhang Chuan neither was dumb either. She took it seriously, while he thought of her as just friendly entertainment. He answered he couldn't betray his lover. Hearing these words, Lou became enraged and smashed him across the face while screaming, "Why did you not say these words while you were enjoying yourself?" Zhang held his face, thinking, wasn't it you who first started to pine for me? But then he thought about it. If Lou carried the child to birth, it would be rather troublesome. He said nice words right away to enable Lou to calm down. He then brought her to New York City, where he bought her several pursuits. Driven ultimately by materialism, Lou agreed to have an abortion. Zhang also promised immediately to treat Lou well going forward. However, Zhang continued as usual following Lou's abortion, handling his guarantees the same as the wind. You would be quite mistaken, though, if you consider Lou Guanhua to be pitiful. Zhang was only one of her several colorful boyfriends. Already at this point, Lou was living with Kenneth. She still hadn't cut off her special relationship with Zhang, though. Lou's view of love was, quite simply, to sweep a big net, gather plenty, then choose which to pursue most wisely. Every time she fought with Kenneth, she would dash to Zhang's house for comfort and peace. Later on, Zhang inadvertently found out the man always hanging about Lou's. Her son was indeed house. Grabbing this opportunity, he said that his mother objected to their being together. Though he had never been married, Lou had 2 sons as well. Should they not separate, his mother claimed she would cut off their mother-son relationship. Lou took this quite seriously and was quite unhappy with his mother. Lou had argued with Kenneth on July 30th. She left and then moved in with Zhang right away. She could stay, he said, but she had to leave weekends since his mother worked as a housekeeper for someone else, usually making weekend trips home. Speaking of this, Zhang revealed strangely that Lu disappeared late night. They had just left the dinner and driven Lu back to the massage parlor. Then he watched, with his own eyes, her boarding Kenneth's car and driving off. Since then, he told the police he hadn't seen Lu. According to him, Kenneth killed Lu. The cops peered silently at the man Zhang Chuinsi before them. From his face, he did not seem like a good man. With his strong alibi, Kenneth was attending a conference at Port Hope and carried with him boyfriend Hilbert. Many qualified witnesses abound. He was now asserting, clearly not possible, that he watched Kenneth drive Lu away. He was lying, in other words. By now the cops had seen a cut on Zhang's forehead and asked where it came from. Originating from. Suddenly nervous, he claimed to have knocked into something while reorganizing. But the police knew exactly that a wound this length was clearly a knife cut. Given Zhang's regular lying, the police examined the nearby surveillance cameras. The video claims Lu visited Zhang's house and never left the day she disappeared. Returned once more. By next afternoon, Zhang had loaded a rather large suitcase into his car trunk. Still, he left the suitcase unpacked when he returned. Surely Zhang was rather cautious about illegal activity. Still, the police did not immediately investigate. They only assigned someone to covertly monitor his dwelling. Given the person is dead and Zhang is so highly suspected, you could find it confusing why not get him straight away for an arrest. Why should one postpone anymore? Surely enough, not long after the police paid house visits, Zhang and his mother several times cleaned the car both inside and out. When the supervisor of surveillance revealed this situation, the police were furious. They seemed to be aiming for proof destruction. The police thus hurriedly sought a search warrant. Police, smelling something quite unpleasant, entered Zhang's house. Finally, they looked at the entry to the basement. Actually, that terrible smell came from this direction. The police discovered shortly that a portion of the floor had been quickly replaced after damage, making use of rather mismatched tiles. The results showed after lifting the tiles and confirming with fluorescent reagent that blood had been spilled here rather extensively. The draw-through of the room also revealed a blood-stained glove. Apart from that, at Zhang's house they also found gray plastic bags exactly like those applied at the scene after the body was dumped. Blood splatters on the clothes also revealed DNA from the victim. In the vehicle trunk, although they answered slowly, the police applied very sophisticated techniques. Their search turned up important proof independent of his washing method. The cops arrested Zhang straight away and charged him with first degree using this information. Killing. Still, the police did not seal and let Zhang's mother stay in the house. Out of the scene of crime, September 3rd found someone discovering a suitcase on Lake Ontario. It opened to show just the torso left. It turned out to be Lu Guanhua. Moreover, the color and design of the suitcase exactly matched the one Zhang had photographed. Far away. With all this proof, could they straightly condemn him now? Actually, the most important murder weapon still vanished. One cannot directly establish the killer of the person. The present information lacked a whole chain of evidence. Zhang did deny to confess, sure enough. He said, "The data you found merely shows that someone died in my house, but it does not show anything else. Not mean I passed her. I really have no guilt after all." The cops also lacked guidance on what to do given this dilemma. Still another issue arose before they could address this one. On September 9th, Zhang's neighbors reported to the police they detected something foul. Smells coming from his house. They had knocked on the door to voice grievances, but nobody answered. Right away the cops went to his house and discovered his mother dead for a very long time. After the coroner's inquiry, sudden death was found to be the outcome of heart diseases. When Zhang found out about his mother's death, he sought temporary release to handle the ideas for the funeral, managing everything. He would then return to jail and freely confess. At that moment, the prosecutor was rather pleased since he thought he could at last close this case. Meanwhile, they had underpaid Zhang Chunchi. Zhang said, missing the investigator, "At this point I will not hide anything anymore. My mother did kill Lu Guanhua." Uncertain of what was going on, the prosecutor froze. Zhang Chunchi drank water, then started to slowly remember. Since she had been married twice and had children, he claimed his mother had always hated Lu. From previous relationships, lived modestly, and employed the impure massage business. They were eating the day the incident happened when his mother showed up home out of nowhere. Early years. The two women were fighting right now. Lu cursed his mother, writing her old and illogical and incapable of knowing good from bad, right from right. His mother also cursed Lu depraved, shameful, and accused her of theft. This charge of theft was obviously developed. One cannot know whether it was accurate or not. Still, his mother owned a pricey piece of jewelry that disappeared rather conspicuously, and she thought Lu grabbed it. Zhang said their argument turned increasingly hostile. Declaring she wanted Lu dead, his mother went to get a cleaver in the kitchen. Coming running in to stop them, he inadvertently sliced his forehead. Then he cleaned his cut in the bathroom. Lu was on the floor when he got back, his mother seated atop her, still developing it. A few minutes later, his mother came to her senses and asked, "Son, I have killed someone. What then ought we to do?" "What else could I do?" Zhang asked the police. "How could I forward the cops the information from my own mother? She already comes rather old." They decided to split the body and get rid of it after some consideration. After packing the limbs, torso, and head in trash bags, they drove to discard them at different locations. Right now, the offender turns out to be Zhang's mother. Based on one-sided evidence, they couldn't convict, though. They thus looked at both depending on Zhang's statement and the autopsy, drawn from his mother. The coroner claimed she had severe heart disease and that several linked drugs were present in her body. The palace. Mr. Shi, the man who hired Zhang's mother, likewise claimed she was a quiet person, conscientious, but in terrible condition. By now, police believe Zhang Chuenqi was lying. A 40-year-old woman could be defeated by a 70-year-old woman and hack at her desperately? Lu had first attacked. Yet why did she not defend? She just laid there and let herself be stabbed 30 times or more. As police thought about it, Zhang seemed to be fabricating more and more. Perhaps he too felt, though his words lacked credibility. On the third day of the trial, he therefore changed his story quite suddenly. Lu already dead when I came out following a cut healing session. Down on the floor, my mother was only hacking at her corpse, releasing her fury. The judge asked him how Lu died then, and Zhang stammered, "I wonder about that as well. Her unexpected death. How did it occur? Whose killer was it?" Considering his experiences, the judge was so furious he had no words to express. Like a scoundrel, the court kept probing. "Why then did you lie before and say your mother was the killer?" Zhang Chunchi said, "Why should I tell you? I'll say whether I wanna. If not, I won't. This is my entitlement." Hearing these words, the courtroom became loud right away. Everyone wanted to dash over to slap him a few times. Not even his own attorney could stand it, advising him to keep quiet. Then the attorney compiled his ideas and said, "Really, this is rather simple." Driven by love for her son, witnessing his suffering under Lu, the intervention became immediately a superhuman one that knocked Lu down in the blink of an eye's view. This planet does, after all, let anything happen. Human capacity is almost limitless. Based on the defense attorney's case, the jury members thought they had thousands of galloping horses lacking somewhere to run. They even worked to discredit this lawyer. Observing the situation spiraling out of control, the judge pounded his gavel and yelled, "Stop debating. Silence, silence. We have evidence to speak from." "You want evidence right now?" the prosecutor asked. "Right all around." Then he read the forensic examination report aloud to everyone from his briefcase. The victim Lu Guano has 19 defensive cuts in her arms. This suggests that throughout attack the victim was still alive. Besides, the victim has more than 30 knife cuts on her head, all from top to bottom. This implies that the assailant had height above the victim and a physical strength. I would want to ask the defense lawyer whether John's mother exhibits these qualities. At this point, the defense attorney's face flushed red, then became pale and silent. Pointing at John, the prosecutor then said, "You had a relationship with Lu. If not love, then at least friendship. You did still kill her and dismembered her body." What this is an inhuman deed. Even trying to frame Kenneth, you deliberately misled and showed no regret after killing her. Police and falsely accusing other people. The unfair deed is what this is. More than 10 years ago, you left your own country in search of permanent residency and did not think twice to sloppily discredit your nation. This is a treasonous act. Right away after your mother passed away from illness, you blamed all the crimes on her, turning right and negative upside down, so undoing the situation. This is a filialistic behavior. You still shamefully stand as such an inhuman, unfair, disloyal, and unfaithful person. Speaking gibers here is what I do. Your Honor, I advise John to receive a straight first-degree murder sentence. Send him to spend his life in prison without possibility for release. As soon as these words were spoken, the whole court erupted in applause. Still, Canada is a country run under rules. Since first-degree murder is almost impossible to prove he guilty of, still nowhere had been found a weapon. Moreover, none of any signals regarding the victim's body could directly prove John was the killer, unless he came clean personally. With such a messy and complicated love story, the judge decided to postpone the trial for 3 days. 3 days later, after the jury members decided, they believed John's. One acted in dissection and disposal of the body with intention. Right now, the evidence suggests charges of second-degree murder against the defendant. Grew up. He spent the first 18 years sentenced to life in prison without any chances for parole. Years. John's situation paints a horrible picture of moral instead of merely a story about crime. In modern society, deterioration and complex human relationships. In this sense, Toronto will be haunting for a protracted length of time as a horrible warning about what can happen when a person loses their humanity. It reminds us also that, independent of the circumstances, we have to keep our conscience and morality. Second narrative. We will be exploring a sad story from San Antonio that shocked America in 2019. Andre Nicole McDonald was a remarkable, successful Jamaican woman. Ledger. From nothing, she started her career in America early in her 21st year. A few short years of talent and will allow her to reach incredible success and rose to rank among the most admired young millionaires. September 23, 1989, Andre was born in Port Antonio, Jamaica. He grew up in poverty, getting work done, family class, small meals, and continuous deprivation defined her early years. These challenging circumstances set off in her intense need for a better life. Driven from a very young age, she came to America to start her career, to turn rich and above her current circumstances. Andre never stopped striving to fulfill her enormous inner dreams. A universe. She always proved herself to be an outstanding student, maintaining top intellectual ability covering elementary school through high school. Apart from her remarkable academic performance, Andre was quite good in communicating, and a magnetic quality attracting people to her. Having studied marketing in Jamaica, she pursued her American dream by continuing her education at the University of Texas, San Antonio, with an MBA. This turning point helped her to approach her dreams at last. People who never stop trying have a saying chance. Andre in life. This turned out to be accurate. Fate softly arranged an unplanned meeting during her dedicated studies. She returned to Port Antonio and met Andre McDonald, her destiny. Andre McDonald had moved to America early after his mother, although also born in Jamaica. Rude once more to an American man. First in college at Florida International University, learning electrical engineering, but his passion of information technology changed his course in life. Deeper he went into this field, the more drawn he became to new challenges and, through constant effort, he became a computer wizard. But when his college degree opened several attractive career paths, Andre came to choose a quite different path. Since he officially joined the U.S. Air Force, 2004 was a turning point year. Andre's career could be defined as a series of continuous success, with everything looking to be in line. Early summer day in May 2009, Andre visited Port Antonio for a family funeral, where he crossed Andre, 10 years junior. This conference seemed fit for a calm Air Force major, a brilliant student. First sight brought them love. Their age difference became meaningless at last. nature of their close relationship. Their relationship grew quickly, and before long they were walking down the aisle. Andre first worked in Texas, then later posted himself at Lackland Air Force Base, derived from San Antonio. After their marriage, San Antonio saw the young couple building their life here. Living, Andre decided to be a stay-at-home, even though his husband's military career was steady. Bride, she still drives into business success from a great burning need for it. The industry, commercially, not only a dream, this was one she had nurtured and sought for many years. Times, though new to business, Andre's keen eye saw the great opportunities in old regard. She considered this as the ideal ground, a golden opportunity to launch her career. When she shared her company idea with her husband, there was a clear coincidence. Andre's grandmother required specific attention since she recently underwent leg amputation surgery. Consideration. Andre seemed to have fate smiling on him. His business plans seemed to exactly meet a pressing need. Inside her own residence, strong faith in his wife's ability motivated Andre not to hesitate to commit all their tools to help her realize her entrepreneurial dream. He not only agreed to sell his beloved car, but also boldly applied for a big loan to raise first money for startups. And so, at 22, with the intense young passion, Andre established Starlight Homes. Assisted living began her career in business. Andre also gave her all using passion and dedication in running and expanding the company. Assisted living residence. Starlight Home grew a name rather quickly under her exacting and meticulous control, an industry reputation attracting ever-increasing clientele. 2 years later, under Andre's direction, the institution had developed quite brilliantly. He had expected the main, serves a purpose in daily operations. Limited by military duties, her husband gradually became a hands-off owner, not involved in regular commercial activity. Naturally, as Andre McDonald supplied most of the initial funds, they split the gains equally. Their life grew ever more rich and happy as their income increased. Andre appeared to their friend as a gifted businesswoman and a competent wife as well. 2015 turned out to be a special turning point in the couple's life when they embraced their new Elena, their little daughter, is a member. The naive laughter of their daughter made their small house happy. Their financial success allowed them to live lavish lives, owning 2 valuable properties worth $450,000. House in Forest Park and an elegant mansion in Stone Oak, a northern rich area. San Antonio. Starlight Homes Assisted Living had grown by 2019 under Andre's deft direction into a small business with 2 just open branches. Her income was not only steady, but also rather showed remarkable rise. At age 29, she became a millionaire. Andre was obviously brilliant and successful to all. Media saw her as a businesswoman, a devoted wife for her family, and rather good to friends. Andre's future seemed brilliant, full of fresh successes. Still, life is full of unexpected circumstances, and nobody could predict what fate had in mind. Since she has great will to succeed, Andre constantly pushes herself more forcefully. Her strict gym disciplinary schedule began at 5:30 a.m. every morning and in front of, by 8 in the morning, the workplace. She had grown absolutely dependent on this daily ritual for many years. Still, disaster struck on March 1st, 2019. Not showing up at work, Andre, who was always on time, missed first time in years. Like usual, her phone rang not at all. Every attempt to reach her was turned aside. Andreen said he hadn't shown up even when staff contacted her fitness trainer. Morning workout, something never done before. Concerned about this odd absence, employees tried to contact the friend closest to Andreen. Carol Gonbar knew that occasionally her friend and the manager shared coffee. But Carol knew not even Andreen's destination. Growing concern drove Carol from silence. She went looking about Andreen's house accompanied by one of her staff members. Not even with constant knocking answered. Fortunately, they found the back door unlocked and decided to look inside. When she first got here, she discovered the family dog hungry and surrounded in trash all around the floor. Scenes suggesting the dog had gone without attention for several days. But Carol's worries started more from noticing dubious blood marks on the light switch. In the lavatory, anxious, she rushed from the house and immediately phoned a police station. Friend seeking direction for guidance. Inspired by her friend, Carol made calls to Maureen and Dreen's mother to arrange travel to. Officially reporting the missing person case and gathering the scene can be done fastest by. Get police engaged in the investigation. The mother broke when she personally saw the blood stains in her daughter's house. Then she called the police right away. Fast after receiving the report, police showed up at the scene. After much inspection, they discovered 3 strange objects. First missing was Andreen. Her car, wallet, and keys stayed in the house. Second, long hair bits and blood covered over the bathroom light switch. Third, in the backyard, there was an odd mound of ashes with a zipper head that suggested there had been clothes burning there. Maureen agreed that the zipper came from her clothes. While police were evaluating the situation, husband Andreen McDonald hurriedly left house. Claims he had found Andreen. Andreen had a history of migraines. Thus, upon learning his wife was missing, his first checked the hospital on Highway 281. He asked the personnel, then confirmed his wife was there. Hearing this news brought everyone relief. All the disturbance seemed to be was a misinterpretation. Everyone still chose to visit the hospital. To be sure, though. Ironically, though, when they arrived, they found Andreen absent, rather hardly present. Andreen discovered was just someone with the same name. He left fast after asking, just for the name. Andreen was also confused. He gave the police anxious information on what had happened the evening before. Expected to help with the investigation. We battled last night and slept in separate rooms. She seemed still asleep this morning, so I dropped our daughter off at school before reporting to the base for the Air Force. She left the house, what I'm not sure from. Knowing the reason the conflict arose, he stopped before saying, yesterday, while looking over taxes records, I discovered she had opened yet another branch under just her name. We had decided from the start that the business was two-person venture split evenly. She wanted to grab assets, but her behavior infuriated me, and we started fighting. My wife also gets hot under pressure. I drove when she came home late evening still angry. Spent some time around, stopped at a petrol station to refill, and went rather late to sleep. Following inquiry, police confirmed they saw him on the gas station security camera. Andre's comment also seemed to have nothing wrong about it. Everything appeared to be in order. Police then searched the estate all evening until 2 in the morning. The next morning, but found no practical tips. The case seemed to have stopped dead still. Police had to visit every close friend of Andreen out of need to find out whether they found her where she was. During this process, one of Andreen's close friends mentioned a past story that caught police's focus. Andreen had, as it happened, had an affair under cover of marriage. Aubin Hall was a Jamaican man her sweetheart knew. From the same town, Andreen and he were former lovers. They had been together for some time, and even now they still carry feelings for one another, even though they split up. Amongst one another, Andreen also saw Aubin once more in 2017 at a charity function. At the crossroads of love, on one side her first love with endless sweet memories, and the other, a marriage that had slowly faded, Andreen chose to gently rekindle her old flame with Aubin. Lost in their secret relationship, Andreen even obtained a tattoo with artistic letter A. Behind her hand, the numbers March 14th, 76 on a summer 2018 wrist. 2 tattoos unrelated to Andre suddenly showed up and planted seeds of ongoing uncertainty in his life. Brain. Using his intuition, he began to subtly review the social media accounts of his wife. Examining Aubin's pictures in his wife's friend circle, he also discovered this man also got exactly the same A tattoo. Later on, he also found those numbers' significance. The birth date of Aubin was. Andreen responded differently than letting wrath control him in face of this treachery. Complex strategy. He first erupted in fury and threatened divorce, then turned to emotional bargaining. declaring he would pardon everything if Andreen agreed to have those tattoos removed, cut all contact. Never gone back to Jamaica alone with Aubin. Knowing her mistake and weighing the years she spent building their contented family life, Andreen agreed on the terms her husband proposed. The couple rushed back to their happy days as before. Just 13 days before the 40th birthday celebration of Ed Andre, they still seemed to be a delightfully married couple, making everyone around jealous. Still, was this only a front? After all, no matter how hard you try to fix a broken mirror, it cannot be exactly restored to its original perfect state, let alone the human heart scarred. Police said the story lacked something. After much research, they did uncover a flaw. Text messages from the evening before in Andre's phone were recovered by police between the couple. Andreen's disappearance as well. If you bring up Aubin once more, I'll divorce you. Divorce appeals to me not at all. You were first one to bring Aubin into our life. Police revealed that the couple's relationship lacked the harmonic quality first suggests. Looking from the outside, apart from differences on assets, they had deep emotional ones as well. Police most started to doubt Andre's lack of mentioning any of this in his past announcements. When asked for more details, he stayed silent, even mentioning he would see a lawyer. 24-hour police stationed surveillance outside Andreen's estate in search of the truth. Police were not expecting to find anything very next morning. Weird. Andre had gone to pick ammo and a pistol from a nearby gun store. At this point, Andreen unintentionally came across undercover cops watching him in the gun shop. He paid but overlooked grabbing the gun and tried to flee. Realizing their cover was compromised, police decided to act first and arrested Andre. Initially, they worried he might buy the gun to act carelessly. They so sent him for psychological evaluation to the Air Force. Later returning with a search warrant, police checked the house once more. This time they came upon several fresh hints. The first clue was that the garage door had damage even though it had been holed during the first question. Obviously, between the two searches, something had happened. Then they discovered in Andre's among a shovel, axe, 2 gas cans, flashlight, and gloves. Motor vehicle in the automotive sense. These things looked dubious and seemed lately acquired. Police also came across a ripped store receipt in the garage garbage can. Using the address shown on the receipt, they went to the store and watched security footage. Found that Monday, after his wife disappeared, Andre had bought all these instruments. In the garage trash can, police also found some Andre's jeans and a hammer. Blood stains showed on the hammer and the pants pocket. DNA testing indicates Andreen owns these blood stains. Once the hints were found, cops considered the tools, gas cans, hammers, axes, other objects would be helpful, most probably used by Andre to get rid of the body. Considering these destructive instruments, Inspector Javier remarked he had to be connected to Andreen's abduction. Every statistic points to one terrible ending. Andreen passed too. The killer is her husband, Andre McDonald. Police decided to shift their attention from these dubious signals from a typical missing person case within a big murder investigation. Everyone could obviously see the suspicious symptoms around Andreen, but since they hadn't found the victim's body and no direct witnesses, police could have momentarily only arrest him based on claims of evidence tampering. Hearing my son arrested felt like being hit by lightning. Andre McDonald's mother shed a quiet tear. There was a content couple there. How can my son treat his wife? On March 5th, the trial of Andre McDonald began at the Behar County Court. His main charge was deliberate destruction of important documentation, including purchase records. Maybe pertinent for the case are receipts and text messages. Andre McDonald insisted in court he had no part in his wife's disappearance. The gun purchase had only personal use. He said he truly loved his wife and he would absolutely never hurt her. Not finding the victim's body and lacking solid evidence, the court had to let Andre post bail alongside his March 27th payment of $300,000, parallel with the court conducts legally. Andre searched him nonstop as well. Being a respectable local businesswoman, her absence had inspired overall concern. Many hundreds of people volunteered for a significant search, particularly The Air Force Base sent 200 military personnel to support the search together with, considering a sizable police force under organization. The big search team basically turned Behar County upside down, but they generated no results. She had vanished like dust in the air without any trace. On the 8th day after the tragedy, family and friends, in aggrieved surroundings, begged for Andre in nighttime. They sent Andre a note among flickering candles and earnest prayers. Tell us, and whether you still have conscience, where Andre N is. Still, answering that plea was only terrible silence from Andre, who continued to deny whatever information on the fate of his wife. 3 weeks without leads meant Behar County officials had to seek assistance from Texas, declaring a $5,000 reward for any information that might produce the place of Andre N. Gradually, the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, also joined the investigation. By now, this mysterious disappearance had attracted a lot of public notice, touching hearts all around among Americans. Michelle, an FBI agent, said, "I want people not to lose hope. We shall never stop looking and always keep in mind this case." Still, in spite of the national consciousness and extensive search campaign, there were no clues of Andre N. The case stopped dead cold. After 133 difficult days of relentless search, on July 11, 2019, a volunteer named 6 miles from Andre's ranch, Clifton, stumbled upon a human skull by accident. Domestic. The remains were cleverly concealed next to a heap of cattle bones, like a last effort, in order to cover the terrible crime. As soon they received the report, police arrived. Forensic investigation 2 days later confirmed that the found broken bones were indeed. Moreover, Andre N., officially announcing on July 13, 2019, in a sad-looking press conference, Sheriff Javier said, "This declaration, so bringing an end to the months-long search campaign." Andre McDonald was taken straight away for the second arrest, but this time it related to murder. Expenses. The forensic report revealed horrifying details. Andre's spine and ribs were shattered. Her jawbone was badly cracked. But given the body's extensive damage, experts couldn't find the exact source of passing death. Of course, only Andre understood the whole truth about Andre and death. First questioning revealed by investigators that the couple's relationship had actually gone rather bad long ago. Andre also mistreated his wife rather a bit. He had asked for divorce in February 2017, but he quickly withdrew his petition. Andre stood up against the murder charge. August 2016 saw me stay 6 months at Keesler Air Force Base in Mississippi. Program of instruction. At that time, we still had a good relationship. Problems did not exist. But I received a text from Andre Nay during a break, saying she needed a disagreement. I thought it a joke, but when I got home early December, everything had changed. Andre was also rather cold, very different from past. Knowing our relationship was damaged, I filed for divorce. Ultimately, though, the asset conflict was too complicated and I dropped the petition. About domestic violence, it is absolutely unfounded. My wife exercised every day and was rather strong. I could not have beaten her. Andre gradually admitted under interrogation to the conflicts between them and embraced their strife. He paused, though, and insisted he wasn't when his wife's death came up, including the epidemic interfered with the trial. Thus it lasted for years. Starting in April 2021, Andre was under house arrest awaiting a final decision. Maybe from a guilty conscience. Just 3 days before the hearing, January 17th, 2023, Andre told his mother he had killed his wife. He then called the mother and sister of his wife. On the 41-minute call, he broke down and told the truth. That evening, after returning from the petrol station, I skipped the bedroom, but argued with my wife rather differently. I brought up divorce and asset separation. She became quite angry out of nowhere. She tried to hit me, curse, spit at me. Angry, I gave her a headbutt and scraped her face. She ran, hiding her face, into the bathroom. When she saw the blood in the mirror, she got much more furious. She worked out regularly, and could lift 270 pounds, so I was quite worried she would weigh me. I had to thus sit down to dodge and grab the opportunity to attack her legs, so enabling her to downslope. She kicked a couple of times, then went still on the ground. Right then, our daughter arrived, overheard the noise. Wanting her to see this, I took our daughter back to her room and calmed her. Calmed her is sleeping. 30 minutes later, I returned to the bathroom and she remained still. On the ground, when I walked up, she had stopped breathing. This is precisely the truth. I really wanted not to hurt her. Please take some thought on me. Andre McDonald declared the entire episode an accident. On January 20th, 2023, the trial officially started. Andre McDonald once more related the incident as he had written about. Over the trial, the judge asked a number of insightful questions. When you found Andre had stopped breathing, why not call 911? Andre McDonald claimed calling emergency services could not have saved her. Right then, I wanted our daughter not to see. My wife should disappear from the house quickly. I drove to a neighboring ranch, set her next to a dead cow, then undressed her completely. Right when I got home, I burned those clothes in the backyard. How would Andre's several broken bones be explained? Andre said, that day after police finished their house search, I went to the store to, along with gas cans, pack a hammer and an axe. I handed her gasoline, then burned her with a lighter. Once the fire out, I hammer her face and neck over and over. I was rather furious at the time, since, had she not had an affair, had she not tried to grab assets, if she hadn't insisted on debating and getting physical, things wouldn't have had come to visit this. Andre underlined that his acts were self-defense. He had no intention of killing. In a video demonstrating this, he even displayed the great physical condition of his wife. His point of view made logical. After 6 days of trial and 33 witness testimony, the jury hung on deciding whether or not Andre McDonald should either be cleared, found guilty of intentional murder, or manslaughter. Andre showed no regret after confessing, desecrated the body, some jury members considered, and skillfully defended himself in front of courts free from guilt. After the incident, he also moved all the money from their joint bank accounts. Police still today and elsewhere have not found where the money vanished to. Although some people felt this, all of these terrible deeds could not be pardonable. Case seemed more like an accident. Andre McDonald had no intention of killing, that it was really inadvertent. He was a disciplined military man without any past criminal record. Andre argued nonstop from many points of view. At last, after almost 11 hours of discussion, the jury decided. Andre was sentenced 20 years in prison and declared guilty of manslaughter. This decision let the judge sentence 5 years for evidence manipulation in February 2023. Andre McDonald served 20-25 years in prison overall. Andre McDonald later on appealed, but all appeals were turned down. Especially in the later civil lawsuit, Andre McDonald was mandated to pay $110 million in damages, as well as with punitive damages totaling $100 million. Andre's family would get these payments. At least $60 million would be set aside for daughter. Elena asked. Considering Andre's past financial moves, the prosecutors sought evidence proving a trust fund for his daughter to have when she grows up. At last, the 4-year experiment came to an end. The court's ruling, though, cannot heal the broken hearts. Andre McDonald's sister asked him fiercely questions. Why went for murder? Why not accept divorce as your answer? You know you cannot run away from God's wrath or obligation. The prosecution thus also felt somewhat let down. In their eyes, Andre McDonald was absolutely merciless, driven precisely, free of regret after the crime, disposed of evidence by fire and a hammer. He said nothing one could rely on. He should have had at least life behind bars. Actually, believing the sentence was too harsh, most people agreed this. Forgiving, still, he had parole chances. In this tragedy, daughter Elena was the most beautiful person. The small child, 4 years old, could hardly talk and had been diagnosed with severe autism. These events now had her experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder. For a child, such events are truly catastrophic. Her young soul has suffered permanently from this. Third stories. The body of famous Hong Kong actress Abby Choi was found on February 24, 2023, by police in Tai Po Hong Kong House, Leung Mate Soon Village. One could call the graphic depicting the horrible crime scene terrible. Many people became sick looking at the room. Choi was rather well known in the fashion and entertainment spheres of Hong Kong, but her fate has lately come to be connected with words like dismemberment for disposal, using boiling soup, dismembering, and fragment storage among other methods the body involves, in a refrigerator, so causing the case to be shocking everywhere. The incident was covered even by CNN and BBC. Other news sources have convoluted this once clear case since then. Some said it was a property dispute. All others claim her romantic relationship, past and present, was the driving force. Partners, apparently involved in the same-sex affair. What then exactly did she go through, and why was she killed in such a merciless manner? Abby Choi came into birth in Hong Kong on July 15, 1994. Her mother, Changjin Ian Fei, was a classic village woman. Married her first husband while still a child. She lived in Haikou City, Hainan, China. Her in-laws were strong in Hong Kong, thus they moved there and brought Choi. The good times, though, were fleeting. Soon after settling in Hong Kong, her husband became addicted to gambling, leading to their split. Changjin then married the present stepfather of Choi, a restaurant owner, and they had 2 daughters, all taken together. Choi was quite friendly with her half-sisters and stepfather. After remarrying, Changjin's current husband decided to go back to Hainan from Hong Kong, concerning economic development and investment. Originally working in titanium metals, they later ventured into building projects in Hainan, amassing hundreds of millions of Hong Kong dollar wealth. Changjin even launched a social media page a few years ago to chronicle her daily life. People from Hainan knew her to be a gentle soul. As a mother, she advised her daughters often to be sensitive and sympathetic. Then 15, Choi ran across peer Alex Kwong still in school. Unlike Choi's family, Alex came from a humble background, but she didn't give a damn. She loved him truly, and in 2012 Choi turned 18 and registered their marriage. The couple had a son and a daughter taken together. At that time, Choi also started her Instagram page, showing purses and handbags and necklace, attracting many admirers with his drawing. Her husband, on the other hand, had no consistent job. In 2013 and 2015, he steals 39 necklaces, 32 bracelets, and gold in the Out Simong area. Charged Hong Kong with 7 counts of theft. Early 2015 saw him con others under the pretense of a high-end middleman using a gay dating app, dealing in precious metals, claiming he could profitably resell gold. He conned 4 close male friends of almost 5 million yuan, or almost exactly 203,000 is the value. February 2015 saw him taken under police custody for fraud at Whampoa Garden, his residence. Choi then came out on bail, and he battled with money as well. In 2015, American Express Bank reversed $100,000 from his account. Another creditor grabbed control over almost $1.58 million from him in 2016, even seeking debt. Take him before the High Court. Alex turned into a wanted criminal and decided to run then. Amazingly, for years afterward, he routinely traveled from mainland China to Hong Kong, but the Hong Kong police missed him. Choi most definitely knew she had wed the wrong man and quickly divorced upon escape. After a divorce, Alex was awarded custody of the children, and they were sent to live amongst his relatives. Choi then began anew, married Chris Tam Fongchun, the son of the owner of popular chain of restaurants Tam Jai Noodle in Hong Kong, spanning hundreds of outlets with a 27-year history, encompassing several branches. On December 9, 2016, Abby Choi and Chris got married grandly, although they never formally logged their marriage. Most of the things in both houses stayed separate. Quite fascinatingly, after the wedding, in 2018, Choi purchased a high-rise apartment on Manhattan Hill, which currently has almost 45 million Hong Kong dollar market value, which relates to about 5.8 million US dollars. Though they lacked official marriage records, their married life seemed rather beautiful. Choi got a son and a daughter with Chris. Choi's mother, Chung in F.A., captioned family photos she regularly posted on social media. About my very filial son-in-law, his future is rather remarkable. Every time we get together, we talk endlessly, understand, and support one another. Treasure the wonderful journey life presents and count blessings for everything. These books clearly show that Chung and F.A. loved her new son-in-law very much. Christopher here. Chris also gave Choi's 2 children from her past marriage quite good care. Usually, they traveled carrying all 4 children with them. Choi's new in-laws were also rather pleased with her, calling her gentle, beloved daughter, even without regard to bloodline. Once Chris' family approved, Choi's career took off, most likely due to more motivational support from many directions. She visited public events in the fashion business often and crossed several well-known celebrities. At late January 2023, Choi went to Paris Fashion Week. Choi made a cover appearance on February 15th, just 8 days before the incident on a Paris fashion newsletter labeled as most forthcoming talent. Alex Kwon, her former husband, continued to lead a laid-back life. How then might he let go of the ATM he once owned in the form of his ex-wife? For years following their divorce, Choi continued to provide financial support for Alex's family. According to a Chinese media source, Choi even promised to look after her ex-husband for the rest of his lifetime. She never got during the divorce, not even with company investment losses. Hostile. Choi promised as required. According to China.com article, Alex's family looked after the 2015 divorce. 2 children. But in reality, Choi paid all of the expenses, including hiring a maid riding with a private driver. Meanwhile, Alex's family asked Choi for money using the children as cover, which would have violated. They blew straight away. Years of wanted criminal Alex regularly passed for a wealthy man living on mainland China, then spent one evening for the purchases of others' drinks, hundreds of thousands of Hong Kong dollars. 2018 saw Abby Choi co-found Ping Lady Limited, a company she and her ex-husband started together. Brother Anthony Kwon oversaw. Choi invested in launching Bear Snack, a snack company where she also helped Anthony out as a director. Anthony shared on social media a group photo with the hashtag bro and sis. Love points to a rather close relationship. Alex's family also somehow kept friendly with Choi's new in-laws. Bao Tai, a friend of Choi, says that Chris, her current husband, once suffered with a leg injury healed under rehabilitation. Alex, her ex-husband, visited him often during that time and graciously invited Chris to accompany him at a casino. Some patients complained about this behavior at the rehab center. Declining Alex's invites, Chris decided to act as instead of lying to Choi. Should nothing have happened, under Choi's direction, the present husband, as well as her ex-husbands, families even have group pictures taken after temple visits. From outside, the 2 families have a rather complicated relationship generally. Characterizes. Most shockingly, in 2019, Choi paid $72 million Hong Kong dollars for a luxury house. Registered it at Kadubi Hill in Kowloon, Hong Kong, under her ex-father-in-law. Kwon Kao's name is. Still, some media outlets conjectured that Choi's driving force was tax avoidance since she had an apartment at Manhattan Hill already. Should she buy another house under the alias of a first-time buyer, she could save $7 million in levies. 2020 saw Alex Kwong's family move into the lavish house and post a picture of a hot pot dinner under the caption "First Meal" in the new house on Instagram. Choi was not aware that this house would finally become her memorial. Choi left intending to sell the villa registered under her ex-father-in-law's name in 2022, so leaving part of the income as a fund for her children's education, and with the remaining balance to buy a new house for her family, including her ex-husband. Legal assistance, since she was not the registered owner of the house and required to provide sufficient evidence she had paid for the household, thus continue under her control. At $77 million Hong Kong dollars, Choi listed the luxury house for sale in January 2023. Often bringing potential buyers to view the property, real estate agents made Kwong Kao comes across as rather anxious. Choi insisted she would run everything flawlessly, but he refused even with her repeated guarantees to be in line with it. With his name on the house, he felt it should be his. Should Choi dare sell it, he even made threats to kill her. The resistance of Alex's family just helped to strengthen Choi's will to proceed with the sale. At last, after several price cuts, she sold the house for $63 million Hong Kong dollars, running virtually $10 million Hong Kong dollar losses. Still, Choi seemed to trust the family of her ex-husband in spite of all. At first, she had 3 personal drivers, but one of them left early on without warning. 2020. Under heavy pressure from her ex-husband's family, Choi thus hired Anthony as her personal driver, her ex-brother-in-law. But this turned out to be a part of a more general plan meant against her. On February 21st, 2023, at 2:02 p.m., Choi spoke with her friend Bao Tai last. She was seen at 2:15 p.m. dressed in white slippers, white pants, white long-sleeved shirt, and boarding a white 7-seater driven by Anthony Kwong while carrying a purse. Close to Cadbury Hill. Usually, she was supposed to pick up her children from school, but she vanished without notice. Just a little later, early on February 22nd, Chris, eager to see his wife back, could not wait anymore. Told the authorities she disappeared and guaranteed a $2 million Hong Kong dollar reward for any material exposing Choi's whereabouts. Choi's biological relatives also gave an additional $2 million Hong Kong dollars, while her close friend added still another $2 million Hong Kong dollars, so augmenting the total prize to HK dollars valued at $6 million US dollars. Once they received the missing person report, the cops began searching immediately. Then discovered the financial conflict over the custody between Alex's family and Abby Choi. Estate Hill Estate. Moreover, the family had great incentive for the crime since Choi never registered officially. Her coupling, without a will, her 4 children would inherit her estate, at least half of which would be at least. Heading to see her 2 children with her ex-husband. First called for questioning was Anthony, the driver. Trying to direct the investigation, he provided many false details during this time. Choi vanished after leaving the car on her own. When asked to show the dashcam footage, he claimed the camera was broken. The police then phoned Choi's former in-laws, Kwong Chow and Jenny Lee, who also had presented varied degrees of false confession. But Alex had vanished as well when police tried to reach him. As the investigation came to a standstill, Choi's mother suddenly called the police, stating that in a dream her daughter seemed to have seen. In the dream, Choi claimed she was in a scene surrounded by barking dogs and having a mountain behind her. She made rather frequent references to Taipei. Strangely, on the afternoon of February 24th, 2023, the cops found Choi's remains in a house in Lung Mi Swan Village, Taipei, Hong Kong. She had died, though, already. Her arms and legs turned out from a refrigerator. Other body parts had been thrown away. The house was simply equipped with a few tables and sofas, no bed, and curtains covering. Concerning the walls and windows, authorities discovered among a meat grinder, aprons, baskets, face masks, gloves, and other tools associated with crime. Police were guided to gradually reconstruct the events by witness accounts. On February 21st, Anthony loaded Choi into a 7-seater car. Alex Kwong then got on, as the car came to stop near the Lion Rock Tunnel entrance. At this point, Choi and her ex-husband began fighting, and Choi was knocked out. At 3:12 p.m., the car arrived at Lung Mi Swan Village. Driven probably by Kwong Kao, another white 7-seater car followed behind. In this second car were tools connected to crime. This raises the question of why the brothers would involve their father, 65 years old. The background of Kwong Kao is really rather convoluted. Previously a detective sergeant in the Hong Kong police force, he obtained the Hong Kong police medals for first class and long service. But in 2005, Kwong Kao mistreated his position viewing a criminal case in order to get the particulars of the victim for correspondence. He paid the woman frequent calls and even paid her house visit. To reach her, Quan Cao was arrested following the woman's police report of the incident. Probe. Quan Cao quit from his post while on bail waiting for trial and came clean about guilt, bringing the matter under quiet settlement. Legal-minded people such as Quan Cao and Joy often know the fate of criminals, which motivates them to abide by laws, or understand legal procedures and get better in dodging responsibility. This raises their propensity for criminal activity as well, though. Quan Cao most surely had the brains behind this case. From the evening the incident took place until early hours of the following day, residents of Lung Mi Swan heard ongoing cutting noises coming from the house. Though they cannot understand the words, they also heard a man and a woman fighting. Since they thought it was a typical household dispute, they omitted telling the police. Villager Jiang pointed out that the house had been vacant for some time and was just recently leased out, 1 to 2 weeks before to the incidents. Usually one could find a white 7-seater car in front of the house. Investigating it, the police discovered that the renter of the house was Chi Wing, Quan Cao's buddy. Chi Wing worked out of a massage parlor. 6 months before, she developed a regular client, Quan Cao, and the two became romantically involved. Mid-February, Chi Wing leased still another apartment at Arc de Triomphe in Hong Kong. The proof points to this as a planned murder, not a flash of the moment crime of passion. That same day, the victim's body turned up. Police arrested Jenny Lee, Anthony, and Quan Cao for obstructing justice. 1 p.m. Alex had been on escape for a day. Then police arrested him on February 25th. Few days next to Hong Kong International Airport at Tang Chung Pier. She was carried over. 500,000 Hong Kong dollars in cash. A few luxury watches valued more than 4 million Hong Kong dollars. Europe. Lin Shun, 41-year-old yacht employee, was assisting Alex in escape. Renting company. He received 300,000 Hong Kong dollars and was promised to help following the incident. Alex flee Hong Kong to Macau by sea. March 6, 2023. Hong Kong police arrested Alex's new girlfriend Pun Haoyin trying to leave Hong Kong into mainland China. Pun was charged with phoning Lin Shun to specify Alex's departure date. Fascinatingly, Pun did not only Alex's girlfriend, close friend of Choi as well. She had thrown Choi's birthday celebrations, and the two had shot many pictures together. On February 25th, many cops were searched the Kowloon area in quest of evidence, including police, aerial search teams, more than 100 divers, dogs, and mobile units. Nothing came up. On February 26th afternoon, police at last discovered Choi's head in the rather 1.5-foot soup pot of a related house. Matchroom community. Among the vegetables in the soup were also carrots. Police presumptions. The killer thus wanted the soup to smell like kitchen waste for easier disposal. 7 suspects so far have been hauled into custody. Charges included murder to Alex, Anthony, and Quan Cao. They too were denied bail, as well as Jenny Lee. Released were Pun Haoyin, Chi Wing, and Lin Shin. In middle of March, an 8th suspect materialized. A few neighbors claimed to have seen a man in mask keeping watch at the house set aside for the murder day. Front view of the man under observation cameras revealed. Who's the police are still confirming. Pretrial hearings on May 8th. 6 of the 7 murder suspects Choi showed up before courts in 2023. Prosecutors claimed that the car of Choi's ex-brother-in-law had DNA matching Choi's own, and more than 30 sets of police-collected tools ranging from knives to chainsaws to hammers from the village would be tested DNA-wise. Choi's ex-husband and 2 of her daughters later, in December 2023. Former brother-in-law accused of stopping Choi's funeral were also charged. Presently, the suspects. Choi's murder case shows not totally clear conviction. Her former husband Alex and his family members have been charged with murder and other related crimes, including obstruction. Abby had a legal burial. Difficulties in the experiment still under progress as of October 2024. In handling of evidence and forensic investigations. Early 2025 is when the experiment should resume. Hopefully the offenders will receive appropriate fines. Thus, we will adjust ourselves. Usually, offenders in murder cases are antisocial people and harbor psychological defects or great hostility against the victim. Considering the Kwong and Choi families' financial conflicts drove them to seek such a drastic way of fortune, not demanded. Besides, the harmonic interaction among the three families before the incident supports the case, which seems straightforward but gets more complex from rumors and uncertainty. Currently, the most discussed problem on social media is the unclear link between Choi's ex-husband Alex and her current boyfriend Chris. Choi not only gave Alex's family financial support, but also, still Chris's family kept in constant interaction with them. Kwon Kao even paid multiple times lawyers for his defense after his detention, then wrote a note to his family via his legal assistant, saying many online users believe the nature of Abby Choi's divorce case could be beyond the grasp of common people's mind. Some even propose Alex and Chris might have a same-sex relationship. Chris's marriage to Choi only acts as formality. Nevertheless, this concept is questionable since after their marriage, Choi brought Chris a daughter and a son. It would be like this: senseless in a sham marriage to produce two children. Others also claim that the decent relationship among the Kwong family, Alex Kwong, Chris, and Choi were former members of the Pupils. But a recently available wedding video from 2016 seems to show another point of view. About their appointment, Chris admits in the video that their interaction felt more like chance, come upon on the street rather than among peers. Still another theory holds the two have two. Choi was only a part of families, which were essentially members of a mutual benefit society, instrument both families used to clean money. Usually, Choi's house had plenty of luxury goods, far above basic needs. Usually the pursues and shoes match in style and color, which some netizens speculate was a means of distributing luxury goods. Heavenly. Of course, netizens' pure speculation derived from no actual data still remains previously. Choi apparently paid for a villa under the name ex-father-in-law Kwon Kao to use for try not to pay taxes. Rich people wouldn't be bothered. Those familiar with the issue reply, not bothered by a small tax savings amount, since it would only cause unnecessary complication. They think of Choi's ex-father-in-law as having some delicate knowledge she could have applied as advantage. Otherwise, why would she continue supporting the family of her ex-husband following their divorce? Said another way, the case still raises many unresolved questions. The online dialogue is active. With contradicting information, it is difficult to understand the complex interaction among the several components of the three households. More police investigations won't help to answer public concerns. In reference to, well-known women are sometimes connected by many people with negative preconceptions, lack of character, displaying wealth, or behaving shallow. Choi was distinct, though. Those close to her have just optimistic things to say. She was philanthropic, educated, and sympathetic. She was polite even to the housekeepers. Once her mother-in-law mentioned that Choi was more loving than her own natural children. Birthdays would see her getting the whole family together to celebrate, and she never missed sending presents to the housekeeper, maid, or driver to make them. Thank you. Abby Choi also started quite actively helping stray animals. Taken in concert with her friend in Baotai, she launched a charity with 10 million Hong Kong dollars annually to support pet cat and dog caregivers. On February 28th, the nonprofit uploaded on Facebook announcing a name change in remembrance of Choi's contributions to honor her. Happy as same, Chris searched her body that day at the morgue with friends and relatives. Later, went back to honor the Lung Maitsuan village crime scene. Chris declared, "Thank you, Choi. Meeting you makes me rather glad." Her mother-in-law was selling incense when she also hoped Choi would rest in peace and tearingly promised to raise her 4 children. Abby, your passing was unjust. Your generosity was misplaced, my foolish child. Those wolves attacked your emotional center. As Choi's mother-in-law observed, friendliness was really deleted. For people like the Kwongs, Their avarice cannot be satisfied by any amount of charity. They would never take responsibility or show thanks. Choi tied the knot at 18. And the man, once her boyfriend, became her ex-husband, turned into her killer only later. Choi staggered slowly into the Kwong family's trap. Outsiders, we might never really understand her intellectual excursion. Perhaps she just carried on what she had been taught growing up. Kindly. Several of them. Although everyone believes that being nice always pays off, one should not ignore the proverb. Easy bullying is a reality for good people. One can ride good people just like horses. Blind compassion may thus not yield desired results. Inspired by Aesop's story of the farmer and the serpent, regarding the Korean movie Parasite and Choi's untimely death, sometimes kindness is only welcomed with cruelty and fail to awaken others' conscience. In another universe, finally, I hope that Abby Choi will no longer be a tool for someone else to profit from. She can return to her energetic self. Fourth story. The sun had long since set just after 9 p.m. on July 29th, 2014, but the air stayed still, scarcely heated. In Pochin Western City apartment building, a few elderly Gyeonggi Province, South Korea residents were still waking and chatting animatedly. From the second-floor apartment next door, faint cries caught attention right away. First, they paid little attention, but with time the crying got louder and clearer. Not easy to ignore. At 9:40 p.m., concerned neighbors knocked on the door of the next apartment. Though I waited some time, nobody answered. The tears kept on from within, and they thought they heard a small child screaming often, "I desire mother." This startled them, since everyone knew the tenant of the apartment was a woman. To ensure safety, they agreed to call the fire department and police. Authorities arrived not long later. After several abortive knock-on attempts, they found the door locked tightly even though they considered breaking down it. When lacking another option, on a ladder, they arrived to the second-floor apartment. Inside, there was an easy layout. One found a corridor behind the main door opening into the living room. The guest house kitchen and bedroom were on the west side of the corridor, the master bedroom on the east side. When I first arrived, they arrived on a terrible scene. Everywhere there was trash, with 19 huge green waste bags nearly adult in height. Around the apartment, flies buzzed, distributing an odor that renders one ill. Floor and door frames were rotting, and walls showed cracks. The furniture still revealed traces of past luxury, but it was now covered in thick layers of dust and shape, so making everything dead and dark. It was difficult to believe someone could be living in such conditions. Sobbing police found a small child in the master bedroom. He appeared to be 5 or 6 years old, staring blankly dead. His stature was thin and weak, his eyes just slightly blue and foggy. His very obvious ribs implied great poverty. The young man stayed lost in his own grief, crying even among all the action around him, as if his only refuge were the TV screen, blankly staring at it. After a brief time, the boy saw police there. His face showed symptoms, and his cries got louder right away. Weary. Over time, the cops softly and patiently helped him to relax. When questioned about why he was alone and answered briefly, his weakness made his words vague. Acknowledging the lad's poor health, the cops decided to bring him to the closest child facilities pertaining to protective services. The lad could at last eat a whole meal there. Still, his way of handling the food stunned everyone. He broke it laboratively into small bits, about half the normal serving size of a child his age. Even so, clearly hungry to the point of dizziness, he insisted on applying his food division strategy. He merely ate the smallest fraction, almost following some unwritten rule. Seeing this, everyone felt conflicted, uncertainty and heartache, not knowing why the young man was acting differently. Still, the anomalies did not stop here. First, the police thought the overwhelming. The smell of the apartment came from just collected trash. But as they headed toward from the guest bedroom across from the master bedroom, the stink got much worse. A formal official slightly opened the guest bedroom door. Though small, The room was also packed with filth. Immediately, everyone turned to look at the middle. About 31.5-inch tall, massive red plastic container with a 33-inch diameter. Apart from that was a cell phone. Of the anarchy, the red container caught out quite obviously, radiating mystery as well as fear. More remarkably still was the lid of the container, pulled down under a large salt bag roughly weighing 22 pounds. The authorities decided to expose the enclosure. Within was a purple blanket covering everything. After excellent clearing, their soft raising of the blanket surrounded it. Right away, everyone felt a cold run down their spine. Really, inside the container lay a body in advanced breakdown buried in an unreported liquid. The long hot weather had accelerated the disintegration process, hence making the condition of the body even more terrible. Agents on the scene assert that, originally viewed at first as a thick porridge or fermenting fish paste, it looked like after the first disclosure. The plastic container was quickly moved by the police to a suitable location for a more cautious search. There they began to methodically review the contents. The liquid disappeared, then so did a jumble of human bones gradually materialized before the researchers. Still, the most shocking moment was arrived with two heads rolling out of the container. At that they realized the terrible morality. Instead of one victim, the container housed two. More closely, they found that separated only by a thin blanket, the second victim had been positioned exactly under the first. This arrangement implied that the criminal had divided the two bodies deliberately, maybe to prevent them from mixing, or for motives the killer understands only. Criminal. Examining further revealed that both victims were men between 40 and 50 years old. First, the victim had top priority with, passed just about a year ago. 3 loops of a scarf surrounded his neck, roughly 6.5 feet around, about 2 meters long. His face was tightly covered in plastic wrap, over 3 feet, almost 1 meter long. Salt flooded the container, perhaps an attempt by the killer to slow breakdown, even if it seems blatantly useless. Lower-level victim had died more than 15 years ago. Still, a mystery was the cause of death for both. The combination of bodily fluids let one identify them. Fairly challenging. The only hint still left was a finger not totally shattered, still clutching a fingerprint. The police commissioned the National Forensic Service immediately to searches for the sad victims, trying to replicate the fingerprint. This horrible case shook Patchen City and bred uncertainty and panic. Enveloped the society. Pressure applied to the rather conscious researchers who were quite aware of their duty to quickly fix the problem, find the offender, and sort the riddles of these two tragic deaths. The Patchen City Police produced the very next day, without delay. The Special Investigation Team consists of 60 elite members. Interviewing extensively was their first task. Neighbors of the apartment where the incident occurred seeking clues about the fathers of the lad. Still, the results simply helped to widen the mystery around the case. Most neighbors angrily insisted they had never seen the young man before. This begged questions about how to proceed. The young child had spent so much time living in such isolation. Their memories only included seeing the woman, who 20 days ago moved into the apartment. The neighbor's account also shown an odd. Think of this woman. She was supposed to be hardly ever at home. Her trips were fleeting before. She vanishes once more. The police turned up Mr. Park, the couple's eldest son, sharing the same mother but a different father. He said the lad was his half-brother and that the lad's father had been gone for a long time. Right now he couldn't get to his mom. Mr. Park also mentioned having moved out of his parents once he turned 18, house where he lives alongside his grandparents. He said he had never given his younger colleague much thought. Half-brother, suppose their mother had sent the child overseas. Research indicates that the basis is the lad's mother, 51, Lee Young-suk, worked in a candy factory. Born in Jong'un City, she battled with a volatile attitude and ongoing depression. This made people steer clear of interacting with her. Father of the lad was Park Dong-hyun, who worked on the pig farm in Pochin City. Still, his story raised more problems. Medical records, phone logs, bank statements, all pointed to no trace of him. Lived for 15 years, as though he vanished. Drawing on Park Dong-hyun's. He had lately had an affair with another woman, and parents speculated he might have run with her. Beside the plastic container, the SIM card from the mobile phone found, registered using Park Dong-hyun as their name. Last used 2013, 1 year before the detection. Still, the figure was that of a colleague of Lee Young-suk. This suggested the actual phone user might have been Lee Young-suk herself. If so, why was she acting? Phone belonging to her husband? The police released a national warrant for due seriousness of the matter for Lee Young-suk accused of murder and hiding of bodies. Not one day after the warrant was issued, surveillance cameras seen Lee near Songri-ai, Pochin City. She seemed to be in a great hurry, fast leaving the plant an hour early from work. This part consisted of a complex industrial zone, including many foreign workers living in factory dorms, creating a demanding environment to underline control. Once you understand this, the police dispatched troops right into the local area. They carefully went over every room in, checked homes and factories. Still, with their best efforts, they found no especially interesting leads. The call records of Lee were then examined and revealed an rare inclination. Every day at dawn, Lee would call an unknown phone number and talk for 10 minutes or so. The police reasoned that the owner of this number might have some relationship with Lee, and where this person lived could be her hiding place. On August 2nd, police knocked down on Sunga's textile factory dormitory room's door. 44 years old South Asian man began claiming to be from Sri Lanka at the door. When the cops respectfully asked whether they might visit to check, the man insisted angrily against it. He just shook his head to indicate he disagreed independent of what the police said. Talk Koreans. Once the cops displayed a search warrant, the man stopped momentarily, then silently gestured toward the kitchen. Lee was hiding there, sporting just underpants. She had vanished quickly. She was taken then to the Poisson police station. Lee quickly admitted to killing 2 people and refrained from trying to cover anything under questioning. She said, softly, "I was wrong." That same day, the National Forensic Service successfully took a thumb fingerprint confirming one victim's identity, Yang Sung-hoon, 48 years old. He worked with Lee and was his lover as well. According to Lee's confession, 2 years prior in 2012, she had first met Yang Sung-hoon while working at the candy factory. They became close and began an affair. 2 months later, they were in a relationship, usually getting together at Yang's house. Lee insisted then that her boyfriend turn over his every pays. Yang agreed without second thought, deeply in love, but the candy factory as well as where they worked had strict rules forbidding staff members from dating colleagues. When the factory first started off, director came upon their relationship by accident and discovered Lee married. Yang dismissed him immediately since his character seemed dubious. Influenced by the director, Lee split from Yang in May 2013. By now, Yang had not only lost his lover as much as his job. Considering this unexpected disaster, he grew rather furious and insisted Lee cover his losses by paying his salary back off. Lee said, though, the money had been used for their lifetime together. She had no reason to revisit it. This led to a dispute. For 2 months, Yang visited the factory frequently looking for Lee and demanding money. Under duress, Lee could only pay back the debt by drawing on a few sources. It wasn't just enough. As their marriage failed, the once loving couple developed adversaries. At last, every meeting turned into intense argument. In July 2013, Yang paid Lee a visit at Simbukmi, Pochin City, is getting his money back. Yang's tenacity made Lee ignore right away, but silently sat down, poured a drink, and passed him one, suggesting they should sip together. Since Yang was already there, he paid little attention to it, even if he thought it strange. He drank while still demanding retribution. After some pleading, Lee spoke at last. "I won't have money to pay you back if you keep fussing like this," she warned. "Should you continue in this manner, I will take your life and subsequently treat mine in same fashion. After hearing these phrases, Yang battled to rein in his anger. He cursed and gave Li firm strokes across the face. Unable to bear this humiliation, Li got up fast and pushed Yang with all her strength to the earth. Then she sat on top of him, choked with both hands, and covered him with a scarf. Tightly encircling his neck and squeezed fiercely, Yang battled valiantly, but his body seemed to inactive, his limbs feeble. Depressed, Li turned to sleeping drugs to ease her tension, and carried some pills with her about everywhere. By now they had silently dissolved in Yang's drink, and it was too late by the time Yang realized what was going on. Observing Yang still, Li did not show regret. Instead, she reached for plastic wrap and tightly crisscrossed it over his face several times, then hauled him to the guest bedroom, blanket covered. Many years later, for a long time, she ignored her former lover wrapped in plastic until the body began to break down. She only then acquired the large plastic container she had used 15 years ago, put Yang's body inside, on top of the other victim, and liberally poured in a lot of salt. The truth about the victim on top of the container had become obvious by now. Speaking of, Li, the other victim, claimed to have seen a foreigner with fierce eyes 15 years ago. Sensibly, she had been asked money, but turning down resulted in conflict. At last she overmatched and killed the man. Later she came upon still another foreigner on the street and agreed to pay him $1 million, roughly $750, to help with her body hiding in the plastic cupboard. But was the truth really as Li Young's confessed to be? A DNA test turned up Park Dong-hyun, 41-year-old second victim. He had not been a thief, not foreign, he was native Korean. Only Li's husband, none else here. When the police asked Li once more, she modified her story, saying she hadn't done anything to companion of hers. She said that 15 years ago, one morning, she woke up to find her husband dead on the front porch. Driven by love for her, she was startled suddenly and knew nothing what to do. She put her husband in the plastic container, since she wanted to always save her memories. The case was clearly unpersistent. The police kept probing the couple's background. However, the incident occurred 15 years ago, and not enough information could prove that Li had lost her husband. On August 7th, the National Forensic Service came across not only a Young Suk's body had minor doxylamine content, but more importantly, also observed a similar element existing in Park Dong-hyun's body. Prescription sleeping pills contain the chemical element doxylamine. Medications with sedative properties, allowing simple falling into a deep sleep. Still overdosed, it can cause coma and possibly death. Regular user Lee Young-suk finds this new clue useful. Started to become even more dubious after sleeping pills. Investigators checked drugstores as well. 15 years ago, close to Lee's house, she purchased sleeping drugs including doxylamine. Displayed with, clearly backed by data, Lee Young-suk told the whole story and came clean on her crimes. The chronology begins in 1985 when 22-year-old Lee worked for a Seoul garment manufacturer. Running across Park Dong-hyun, a year her senior, she dropped right into a romantic fantasy and got pregnant before she married. 1 year later, the couple moved to Pochin City, where Park's parents lived, and officially got married. Not too long afterwards, their first child showed up, a charming and attractive young lad. 3 years later, their second son arrived. Dong-hyun Park was hired in a pig farm some distance from home. The family decided, after much consideration, to streamline travel. For years later, moved in an apartment in Sinbukmi, Pochin City, alongside Park's parents. Life carried on otherwise. 6 years later, one day in May 1995, on Highway 325, a horrible accident occurred passing through Sinbukmi from Pochin City. A young man was crushed when 10 tons of sand spilled from a sand truck overturned. Lad basically just across the road. The lad was second son of Park and Lee. Asserted the accident claimed life exactly where the 6-year-old lad was born. The disaster of losing a child resulted in an irreparable shock for the family of Lee Young-suk. This horrible incident left deep scars in her soul, set off a serious mental collapse. She was thus diagnosed with depression, a condition forcing her to rely on sleeping drugs and sedatives to survive protracted, agonizing nightfall. From this vantage point, the marriage also began to show cracks. Lee pointed her husband at responsibility, claiming he had not given their son proper care before his death. The spouse then, in turn, mentioned Lee. Their arguments became more frequent, which sent Lee's physical and mental state spiraling. Medicine. 5 years after the collision, she even had major surgery for a ruptured blood vessel, shipped from her face. Park grew to hate his family more with every argument he had with his wife. He began routinely skipping home to sleep and staying out late. This condition became especially serious in 2003, with months of absence from his house. This was within that period. He developed an affair with another woman. Once Lee came to know the affair, her depression grew worse and her contempt of her husband deepened. Reaction against the treachery of her husband. Beginning in 2003 in search of foreign men and dating, she routinely visited Syangri River in Pachin City. She wished she could let reality slip away. By fall 2004, Lee wanted to leave her current existence. She resolved to provide her husband plenty of water combined with sleeping medications and blood pressure meds, fooling him with promises it was medicine for nasal irritation. Her husband thus passed from poisoning. Seeing her husband die right before her, Lee lacked feeling in her eyes. She laid the blanket gently over the body on plastic container. After her husband passed away, Lee skillfully buried the truth behind several lies. She even spun a story about Park leaving with another woman to help to explain her absence. This strategy not only helped her avoid suspicion, but also inadvertently made her in-laws ashamed. Targeted their daughter-in-law. They so sharply cut off contact with Lee, accidentally let her continue to hide her crime. Then Lee continued to live a promiscuous way of life with several man affairs. Her arrival and departure were rather frequent for her neighbors, with several men, always changing partners. 2006 saw her bring a boy from Wajangbu Street, Jianji Mary's Hospital. The child's father neither Young Sung-hoon nor the Sri Lankan man, but one from Bangladesh. Lee showed neither expectation nor excitement when the child was born. She failed in her responsibilities and routinely neglected to look after her son. In parenting, 2013 saw not wanting to live in debt under relentless creditor pursuit. She killed Young Sung-hoon, her creditor and former lover. After the crime, 1 year, she left the boy by himself and hardly returned to the apartment. She would also make occasional returns, usually bread and milk bought quickly from a convenience store, to feed the lad. The young man lived inside 4 walls from birth until he was 8 years old, without friends or any kind of socializing. The lad only ever knew Lee Young-suk. Neighbors hence were unaware the boy even existed. The poor lad never stopped being hungry. Sometimes fed. Malnourishment made him far shorter than average for his age. 8 years old, he was barely tall enough for a 5 or 6-year-old child. His sole companions were a TV, a phone just for calls, a trash heap, 2 rotting bits. Organisms. TV viewing became his only leisure activity and pastime. This also helps to explain the reason the lad's eyes had a pale blue tint found upon police discovery of him. Professionals think the lad might have this condition, spending lots of time in a poorly lit room. Regarding the man from Sri Lanka with whom I had first, the police assumed concealed Lee might be assisting in crime commissioning. Yet, later on, they concluded he was not a suspect. Arriving in South Korea to work in a textile mill, this man stayed 6 months without means to commit the crime, though at first he did not assist with research. At last he revealed Lee Young-suk's hiding location. Thus, not wanting to accuse him of anything, prosecutors decided February 2015 brought before us this shocking case. Before the Wajangba District Court for a trial, the defendant, Lee Young-suk, confronted 2 counts, one of murder and concealing bodies. The prosecutor argued that even with the circumstances, considering her long-term victim hiding and the mistreatment, defendant's depression of her son, a severe penalty was unavoidable. The first ruling returned Lee Young-suk guilty on all charges and sent her 24 years into incarceration. Not agreeing with the initial choice, Lee chose to appeal, so changing her story. She said now that her husband, Park Dong-hyun, had gone through natural death. She said she simply dumped him in plastic. Owner, Park, Lee's eldest son, 28-year-old, had earlier told police his father had been absent for 15 years, then changed his words also. He said his father had actually died from illness 15 years ago and helped his mother to put the body in plastic receptacle for preservation. What was Park's incentive if Lee performed this out of love for her husband? Involving? Park approved, and the police ran a lie detector test. Strangely, he was not lying right here. Park especially mentioned helping his mother hide his father since in South Korea. Park Dong-hyun's statute of limitations for the crime of concealment is 7 years. Had gone by death 15 years ago. He could not be prosecuted thus even if he confessed. Further, Park Dong-hyun's body contained doxylamine, but the exact dosage remained unknown, precisely and may be insufficient to produce death. As such, the evidence to accuse Lee Young-suk lacked the necessary vigor. The appeal trial convened at Seoul High Court in September 2015. The court considered factors including Lee Young-suk's mental instability, poor health, the unidentified cause Park Dong-hyun died from, and the lack of hard data connecting Lee Young-suk is the killer. Verified was the murder of Young Sung-hyun and concealment of his body. From the initial decision, the appeal court decided one of the two murder charges to be dropped. Against the defendants unfounded, the 24-year sentence was lowered to 18 years in prison. Though still dissatisfied with the result, Lee Young-suk kept appealing. Months later, the South Korean Supreme Court upheld the appeal court's decision. The judge reasoned that Lee Young-suk's peculiar behavior of hiding her husband's body after his death followed from her suffering with impulsive personality disorder and borderline personality brought about death. Anarchy. Procedurally, then, hiding the body cannot be considered as unambiguous evidence. She killed Park Dong-hyun. Strong public reaction was started by this case. Using the terms of sentence, many questioned the court's decision, arguing the fine was too severe. Gentle. Lee Young-suk obviously suffered from depression, but she had deliberately taken too neglected and mistreated her son. The court's ruling seemed to overstress the process of the events instead of paying attention to the actual consequences of the illegal behavior. A handful of points of view said Lee Young-suk did not act by herself. According to her testimony, after strangling Young Sung-hyun couldn't fight since he had been drugged. Still, the strength variance is rather interesting, especially in life or death situations. Between men and women is vital. Exceptional survival. He might have struggled and fought out of instinct. Young built rather solidly, weighing almost exactly 220 pounds, and moving him into the plastic container by a woman alone would most surely have been a difficult project. Her son might thus have been accident. Fifth level of narrative. We will be exploring a tragic story regarding Korean-American twin sisters Sunyeon and Han Jina. Their birth is marked by April 4th, 1974. Suni arrived just 5 minutes before Jina. Asian tradition goes beyond birth order with this 5-minute variation. It is rather deeply ingrained, implying about responsibilities and roles inside the family. Even only by a margin, the older sister, even few minutes, should be expected to look after the family and show more attention. Still, fate seemed to have different ideas for these twins. When the sisters were just 3, years past saw their family fall apart. Suni followed her mother after their parents divorced, while Gina shared quarters with their father. Not long later, following remarriage, their father left the load of raising 6 children for his former wife. For other siblings plus the twins, weight of life mostly affected the unhappy mother. To help her brood, she took many jobs, from bartending to dating several men. Managing so many children at once puts pressure on you. Washed over her. She was driven to work in everything from bartender to even dating. Many guys. Her erratic lifestyle finally led her into an addictive spiral, including gambling. Suni and Gina had times when their parents were away for several days. They must fend for themselves when their refrigerator ran empty, so assuming the responsibility as well about taking care of their siblings. These children basically grew up in the carelessness of their mothers and fathers, but from a young age Suni seemed to be preferred more since she was the eldest child. Against their difficult circumstances, Suni and Gina maintained a great relationship. One got sick, the other could feel it and sometimes even go through the same symptoms. Their invisible thread of sisterly love bound them like two reflecting mirrors. When Suni and Gina were 12, their mother decided to come to America. She brought the family as whole, hoping for a new U.S. beginning. History repeated itself, even though they moved to Seattle a year ago. Their mother once more fell back into the addictive cycle, including gambling. Knowing she couldn't, she raised her children and arranged for California relatives to adopt the twin sistershood. Once more, Suni and Gina had to deal with uncertainty and anxiety in an attempt at survival in a strange land area. In these modern and demanding surroundings, the sisters could only rely on one another to overcome the difficulties that lie ahead. Going to California to live with relatives, the sisters took up their fresh life quickly. They felt they could lead first in their lifetime, a consistent life devoid of daily worry for tomorrow. Even so, they felt some jealousy about their fortune. Everyone always treated relatives fairly, so allowing their sense of love and care during their lifetime. Hence, every time their mother paid them a visit, Gina said she felt less than her sister. Sunaha. Sunia's mother still thought Suni would be more matured and responsible toward the family. Actually, both sisters were rather brilliant. They presented this by acting as co-valedictorians of their high school, suggests both had extraordinary intellectual capacity. Their uncle claims the twin to have had. Sisters grew and developed in healthy competition. Gina and Suni had different personal goals and ways of life. Suni always shone brilliantly, as would be expected from her name. Grin and easy approach. She soon moved front stage in the classroom with many people come drawn by her friendliness and superb communication skills. She seemed to be the prettier. Here among the twin sisters, one of them other relatives noted Gina was also rather brilliant. Still, she had to study far more than her sister did. Her life seemed less straightforward than it did for Solar. She was a bit reserved, quiet, and challenging to approach. Suni, however, on the other side, constantly seemed to have everything before Gina. Of the two, she was the first one seeing someone. Many more firsts, the first to work part-time. Every sibling struggles, and that's natural, but when these twin sisters were growing older, their arguments grew quite nasty. 13. At that moment, Suni poked Gina with a pen or some sharp object, and their argument grew rather tense and strong. Word exchanges were always present, and Suni often. I have more to say to back her position since I am older. This battle appeared to have infinite scope, and Suni seemed to always win in this invisible struggle. Surface level, although the reality was quite different, their appearance suggested to a happy family. Cracks began to show through. In Sunia's last year of high school, when she was suddenly kicked from her aunt and uncle's house venue, their tense relationship with the twins' mother might have helped one to derive the reason. The aunt had told the twin sisters against contacting their mother, perhaps for her gambling addiction or for another motive. Once the aunt watched Suni trying, became furious even though, when writing a letter to her mother, it seemed hardly logical. Suni also noted that her aunt started having mental health issues from excessive alcohol intake. At 17, Suni was kicked from her house. Her last year in high school, she found herself depending on friendly neighbors. These times once more reflected the terrible fact. The two sisters seemed unable to fit inside their own family. Not only among relatives but also between the two of them, friction and conflict ruled constantly. Suni and Gina kept shining academically in spite of all the challenges. Their work produced outstanding high school diplomas for both. A new horizon full of opportunities seemed to be opening out before them after so many storms. Sunia's talent and diligence paid off in a full scholarship for college. A great opportunity for her to keep developing and shape her future. Concurrently, Gina chose another route. Knowing her would not be appropriate in a classroom, she chose to come to America. Air Force, one could consider as a major turning point in lifetime. Suni started to fall shortly after her college life first seemed bright. Into a bad cycle of relationships, she finally got buried in never-ending celebrations, ignoring her schoolwork. She also developed a tendency of too much spending simultaneously, fixed on luxury items she had never dreamed of before. Thus, Sunia's marks dropped. Her grades grew so poor that at last her scholarship was revoked. She had to quit as well. She needed a part-time job if she was going to maintain her way of life. Gina, meantime, was struggling in the military. She felt unable of adjusting to the strict discipline policies and thorough training. Having to get away right away, Gina claimed her father was sick, but leaving the United States Air Force was not easy. Later on, Gina claimed to be a lesbian, but at last she was kicked from the military. Those who spoke with Gina noted that although she was rather intellectual academically, she lacked the capacity to manage challenges in daily life. After her military release, Gina started working as a casino dealer. Unfortunately, from these surroundings, she quickly became addicted to gambling, more and more hoping to at least recover her losses. Gina then started down a mountain of continuously increasing debt. Gina's debt grew out of control for her income. Still in desperation, she started lying even with her closest cousins. Unbelievably, the total Gina steals from her aunt and uncle paid $40,000. She did not stop there. She also stole checks and created. Using credit cards helps her to manage her debt. Her illegal activities brought a 10-day term, imprisoned, and on 3-year probation. Gina seemed to have been driven to develop from her experiences to be a compulsive behavior. Every time Gina got enraged, she would try to destroy something immediately or act in quite negligent manner. Those close to Gina observed that she always sought for her goals achieved by means of lies and manipulation among people. 20 or 22 years old they were. Sunny knew her sister lived under trying circumstances. One day, she picked up a call from, "Can I come see and stay with you?" Gina asked. Sunny nodded straight ahead without thinking. Particularly, the sisters had not kept in close contact very often since graduating from high school. Each was lost in their own life. Thus they only texted or spoke few times a year. Gina understood when she finally saw her twin sister after a protracted absence that Sunny was living a life completely opposite from what she personally does. Sunny owned luxuriant designer goods and lived in a beautiful house, lived in a prime location apartment, and drove an expensive car. Gina felt even now, as an adult, in some way less than her sister. Sunny's life, in fact, was less flash than it first appeared. Usually on the surface, generally speaking, Sunny was in legal hot water and buried in debt as well thanks for this. Addiction to this lavish lifestyle, one she couldn't afford. Sunny eventually pilfers credit cards from friends to maintain a lifestyle she felt to be on par with her wealthy friends. Strangely, though the twin sisters had been apart since graduation, they led shockingly like lifestyles. Their method of addressing life's obstacles also was quite similar. Both sought to get away from reality and avoid confronting their own problems. When Gina moved in with Sunny, their relationship sank dramatically. As their arguments get more intense, they discuss several quite different subjects. From little questions like who left mess in the bathroom, who wore whose clothes, to whom would one assign the housekeeping. Gina once grabbed Sunny's BMW and disappeared for several days. Sunny was furious with her sister's actions upon her return. Neighbors recall being asked to call the police as the twins argued so much. They even participated in actual fighting, Sunny throwing a phone Gina broke her nose on and caused severe bleeding. Upon the arrival of the police, Sunny was taken into custody. She was not arrested for striking her sister. Rather, her friend had brought about, called to reveal her credit card theft and use of illegal money to pay for her ostensive lifestyle. Ironically, when arrested, Sunny said, "I didn't think my friend would notice the credit card. She is wealth." Sunny cleared at last and was given probation. It seemed as though neither of which twin expression of any guilt or regret over their acts. Sunny especially seemed to be acting as though her activities had hardly bearing importance. On the other hand, Gina got even more enraged since Sunny had done, broke her nose and figured she could live her sister's life since she wasn't here. Using her credit card identity, car, and money, she indulged in shopping and gambling. Given they were identical twins, nobody knew Gina was using her sister's identity. She, under Sunny's name, charged thousands of dollars haphazardly. Sunny's release and his following actions discovered this and launched a wrath right away. She announced she would never pardon Gina. Sunny told Gina, sentenced to 6 months in jail, to pay back $10,000. Gina's former boyfriend also reported her to the authorities for theft and check forging. Beneath his name, for everyone who watched or knew, the story of these twin sisters brought about headaches, about it given their never-ending cycle of vengeance. To defend their own, they blamed only each other. Sad and horrible life. The pressure peaked when Gina contacted her sister from behind bars. Sunny says Gina was very friendly, seeming to want them to forgive each other and start again. Gina insisted she had to definitely get her stuff from Sunny's apartment. Sunny admitted, though, that her attitude at that time was terrible. She still harbored strong resentment toward Gina. She also struggled with her boyfriend on top of things. Getting ready and picking a call from Gina brought her mood much more down. Saying she would never get, she yelled into the phone at Gina, her stuff back off and never to call her again. She also told Gina she wouldn't be let back in to the flat and should look after herself. By now, Gina was disappointed by her own family, fostering sister's hate of another. She said unintentionally to another prisoner that she loathed her so much, thus she wanted her sister to disappear from this planet. Perhaps Gina's remarks reflect were only a slip of the tongue and a flash of great contempt and resentment aimed against her sister. Once she was free, though, these negative emotions were no more only ghosts. She had. Law enforcement officials may find it very difficult to follow all official procedures and protocols in the course of looking at cases involving America's most dangerous criminals, who frequently pass under a front of religiosity and morality. One can be quite tempted to turn to a legal means of operation and compromise the law. But this strategy carries a great risk. One runs the danger of crossing the legal line personally and turning criminal. This is why today's narrative shows how vitally important it is to rigorously follow all set guidelines and policies during an investigation, so as not to generate even more problems and not multiply the number of opponents of the law while trying to uncover the first crime. December 25th, 2006 was supposed to be Heather Kwan's birthday. This day the girl turned 21 years old. She intended to celebrate this with her boyfriend Ryan Waller, then pay her visit to his parents. At that time, the young man had turned 18 years old. He was rather younger than Heather. He enrolled at the college the girl was attending. Ryan was regarded as a talented young man with good guitar technique. He moved out from his parents' house not too long before these incidents. Ryan nevertheless kept good relationships with every member of his family and got along with them. Heather also moved in with Ryan at that period into his Phoenix, Arizona, USA apartment complex. A neighbor had lived with him for a considerable period before this, but the space became accessible when that person moved out, and Heather decided to seize this chance. At last being able to live with her boyfriend, the girl was overjoyed. Though their perspective to many seemed to be quite different, the couple had a great relationship. Heather had already graduated from high school and started her study in law at college. Those close to her said Heather was a very kind and compassionate girl who constantly tried to help, support, or at least make someone happy. Although the young man was regarded as more subdued, he was rather future-oriented. He started the same college as well. Though different, the couple appeared to be quite harmonic. They seemed to complement one another. Thus, the variations did not lead to misunderstandings. The couple's life together turned out nicely right away. Already, they had been sharing a month and a half of living together. 2006. Everything was perfect in the young man's family on December 25th. They were waiting for dinner. The birthday girl and her boyfriend vanished from the table, though neither Heather nor Ryan showed up on schedule. The young man's family grew concerned since such behavior proved to be unusual for the couple. Their arrival was never late. Initially, though, the relatives decided not to call for help and wait some time, so beginning the festive dinner without them. The relatives lost sense of time and hoped the lovers were spending time together. Then, Ryan's mobile phone began to be called by the couple even though they were still absent, but he answered no calls. The relatives started to worry since, of course, this was a very significant day for the family. They knew the young man with his girlfriend would never miss the festive dinner, which was scheduled not only for Heather's birthday, but also aligned with Christmas. Ryan's relatives had already begun the dinner, but they decided to distance themselves from the food since they literally felt anxious. According to Ryan's sister, she drove to her brother's apartment during the day, but nobody let her in. She thought the couple was just not at home at the time, so she did not find it unusual. Now, it seemed dubious. Actually, the family had not seen the lovers for 2 days already. Turning to the police station, Ryan's mother sought to inquire about the situation of the young people. That evening, the police were rather busy handling other cases. Usually, the number of calls rises over holidays. The patrol officials did not give the reason top priority, since it initially seemed small. They had to wait thus. Only few hours later, the police officials showed up at the designated address. Ryan's parents' worried state had peaked by now. The father was already waiting for the police close to the apartment of the residential complex the couple occupied. The man grew even more concerned here, since his son was neglecting not only calls to his cell phone, but also knocks on the door. Heather was not responding as well either. The cops had only one way out after many fruitless tries to reach the young people. The cops agreed to smash through the door. Everyone knew something horrible had happened once they were inside. Ryan turned up in the living room. He broke eyes and had a swollen face from severe beating. His nose had split injuries. Still alive, the young man was, though. He appeared to be in a shock condition. Ryan could hardly walk and struggled to respond to police inquiries. Inquiring about the girl, she was reportedly asleep in another room. She was dead when the police arrived, though. Heather was lying on the couch, head wounded by a gunshot. She had suffered comparable injuries as Ryan had as well. She had obviously been battered. Given it was all in abrasions, bruises, and wounds, most of the blows landed on the face. A gunshot wound proved the cause of death. The police suspected Ryan was involved in what had happened right away. The cops made sense in their reasoning. He was the only person still alive in the apartment initially. Second, Ryan had not sustained such major injuries as compared to his girlfriend. Furthermore, lacking were any evidence of a break-in. The young man was acting unusual. He struggled with speech and coordination, which just heightened his guilt-related misgivings. The young man did not need medical help, the law enforcement officials decided. Ryan was sent right away into a patrol car. Then they kept looking over the crime scene. He turned into the primary suspect from the first seconds. Heather could not be assisted anymore. She had been dead for some time, probably a day ago. Ryan behaved strangely right from start. He was speaking non-verbally. Ryan insisted he did not remember anything. Thus the police personnel could not know what had happened here at all. He clearly had many hours in this house close to Heather's body. The cops thought he could have used this period to try to cover what had happened, but he lacked time. Maybe because the parents phoned the police and raised the alert. Ryan was first kept in a patrol car rather than directly heading to the police station. The young man's father, Don, claims that it took 4 or 5 hours before his son was eventually driven early in the morning to the station and questioned. Ryan's clothing were taken away from the station under the guise of needing analysis in a lab. Instead, he received a thin cotton suit. Officially, he was advised he was a murder suspect. Ryan encountered a detective called Paul Dalton from the start, who totally disregarded the possibility of the young man suffering some major injuries. Medics hardly looked at him either. The man was first taken just to the interrogation room and left alone. He seemed not tense or agitated. Rather, he lacked understanding of what was happening. Head on the table, he murmured something incomprehensible under his breath during the first few minutes. He was chatting to himself on the video camera, recording everything that was going on, but it was difficult to make out one word. About half an hour of such suffering, an officer entered the room and the questioning started. Read his rights, the suspect asked Ryan why he was here. The man answered he had no idea. He admitted his head hurt quite badly and wanted to go asleep. Paul Dalton started pressing the inmate right away. Ryan insisted he had no idea what had happened at his flat. Ryan clearly seemed perplexed, depressed, or sick on the tape. He seemed to be hardly able to arrange words into phrases. Ryan backed into a corner and sat there with his knees pressed against his chest, clearly using a psychological defense, like a terrified child. He said over and again that he just wanted to get home. Paul Dalton, meantime, had different ideas. He was about to have him confess to him on the murder. The stranger the suspect behaved like, the more long this interrogation lasted. Ryan simply neglected the name of his girlfriend. He had no answer for this question, not matter how hard he tried. Ryan mistook her last name for something else. He decided at one point it was her nickname. Ryan could not say her age. Though Heather had turned 21, he was sure she was 16 or 17 years old. The interviewee considered the response for a long time, but could not recall what had happened when the police officer questioned him regarding the bruise under his eye. Ultimately, he claimed that he might have argued with his girlfriend and that she was the one who hit him. Maybe this kind of behavior matched the injuries the young man suffered or his condition. To the detective, this seemed dubious, though. He knew this was simply Ryan's means of fooling him. Ryan then once more neglected the name of his girlfriend. He began informing the police officer that Alicia or Christina attacked him. The odd responses made it clear Ryan was not quite right. He had great gaps in his memory and trouble putting words together into sentences. Still, the police officer basically overlooked this information. That was it. He was sure the young man had suffered a facial blow. He suffered no major injuries. Paul Dalton ignored his behavior during the questioning, still suspect of him, trying to guide the dead end investigation. The tape made clear Ryan was acting immaturely at the time. He kept saying he wanted to get home and go asleep. He needed to relax. Ryan seemed to be oblivious of what was happening. Still, he was not allowed to relax. Nobody would let him return home. Ryan had a different story after several hours. He began talking about an attack by robbers since it seemed he remembered something. Though he knew his girlfriend had passed death, he attributed this to his father Larry and a young man called Richie. Richie had lived here for some period before Heather moved into this apartment. The prisoner claimed that once they broke inside, the attackers began firing. Now the young man's version had changed dramatically. Richie had struck him, he insisted. Ryan had no idea what was going on, but he recalled that these people had broken into the house in search of some items. The young man first struggled to recall the weapon these people used for break-in. He then started mentioning 2 revolvers the criminals carried. One of them turned out as Heather's murder weapon. Ryan nevertheless said something that startled the police officer. He claimed that they aimed at Heather, but also at him, and the bruise on his face was really connected to the fact that he was aiming a handgun. This completely explained the young man's behavior. He could literally be on the brink of life and death all this time in the interrogation room. The damage he suffered easily explained his young behavior, memory lapses, incoherent speech, and want to lie down or go out constantly. Since there was no exit wound for the bullet, we were discussing a quite life-threatening wound. It was still in his head, even if Ryan was speaking the truth. He obviously might be suffering from internal bleeding, which could kill the man. For the investigator, though, all this sounded dubious. Paul Dalton concentrated on the fact the young man changed his testimony several times rather than on his likely injuries. For the investigator, this fact started to show clear dishonesty and attempts to complicate the probe. His misgivings grew stronger. Thus the questioning went on even with the young man's behavior and condition. The investigator found no one word of the suspect credible. Ryan would simply not be talking to him now, and would be dead, like Heather, if he had truly been shot in the eyes with a revolver. Simultaneously, it was clear that the array of symptoms the prisoner went through pointed to a traumatic brain damage. This was just typical of such circumstances. Since all law enforcement personnel receive specialized training, the police officer ought to have known this rather well. Determining whether a traumatic brain injury exists is not difficult, particularly considering such clear symptoms. Although every police officer possesses these abilities, Paul Dalton only disagreed to accept it. He continued to insist that Ryan had to take part in the interrogation and that they would not let him return home. He felt they were trying to fool him. Nobody would let him sleep. Rather, he just made the young man more under pressure. At the same time, the investigator aimed to clear the facts, mend the sequence of events, and spot inconsistencies suggesting the validity of the suspicions. One after another, questions came pouring. From Ryan, who the assailant shot first, they sought to ascertain whether he contacted the rescue service, why he still could not get in touch with the rescuers, why he did not answer his parents' calls or open the door for his father. Ryan was, however, fighting a brain hemorrhage at that time, which was progressively killing him right then. The questioning went on even though he couldn't even recall what he had for breakfast. Ryan understood what was happening. Naturally, he knew he was in a bad position and started trying to persuade the detective he was speaking the truth. At last, Ryan launched a fresh, frantic effort to show the police officer he was not a killer. He approached him straightforwardly and gazed directly into his eyes. The investigator saw at that instant that the young man's eye was truly shot through. Then he decided to bring him to the hospital after believing the man. At least, it was required to ensure the young man was all right. The police officer dismissed it simultaneously as not very important. Not even did he assist the young man to leave the house. Ryan kept walking toward the exit on his own while leaning against the wall and carrying a bullet in his head. The paramedics carried him to the hospital on a stretcher only outside. Ryan was hauled to a hospital. The medics soon discovered that the activities of law enforcement officials had greatly deteriorated his condition. He should have gotten assistance right away upon arriving in the apartment. At least 7 or 8 hours passed. The doctors discovered a bullet in his head, a hemorrhage. But the worst thing was Ryan could not be operated on since by then an infection had developed in his head. One had to manage the infection before the surgery became safe. Consequently, only 3 days later the bullet from the victim's skull could be taken out. Ryan suffered with cognitive issues and pain all this time. December 28th saw the victim operated upon. The young man stayed in the hospital for almost a month, during which he underwent additional recovery. Unfortunately, the bullet and later miscalculations in the police officer's behavior caused significant, permanent damage to the brain, part of which was infected and simply stopped to function. Additionally lost was the guy's left eye. The worst were the seizures the neurosurgeons came upon, though. They started during the period of rehabilitation. The medics claimed the man would be plagued by them his whole life. The neurosurgeons were convinced that the degree of the consequences could have been much lowered if the police had brought the victim straight to the hospital right away. Maybe it was even feasible to avoid such issues he would today have to deal with entirely. Fascinatingly, the medics also found a fracture in Ryan's jaw, which he claimed the police had caused. His odd and childlike behavior infuriated the detectives. It is not excluded that this deliberate or inadvertent blow to the face simply made the bullet in the head worse. Having carried out the operation and seen the young man's recovery, the medics constantly underlined, one way or another, that the behavior of the police personnel resulted in quite real harm that could have been avoided. The investigators kept on their task in meantime. At last Paul Dalton acknowledged his error and resolved to do all possible to find the truth regarding the crime. The investigator succeeded in pulling the curtain of secrecy over the occurrence involving Heather and Ryan. As it transpired, the event started 2 days before the cops showed up. 2006, on December 23rd, the couple stayed at home all day. They ordered pizza. Everything was in line and did not stand out against the backdrop of regular days. But the neighbors say Richie, the former neighbor, came after the pizza delivery. He got into arguments with Ryan. After a brief verbal fight, the young people just scattered. Far from crime, The couple were decent young people devoid of mental problems or bad habits. They lived a quite measured, peaceful life. Richie, on the other hand, did not show up in major crimes, but was well known in criminal circles and regularly held responsible for different offenses. Richie suspected the attack was carried out by the police personnel. Ryan mentioned his name just during the questioning. Maybe this attack had as its motivation retribution. Ryan's memories were generally still lacking completeness and coherence. Ryan assisted the inquiry in restoring the image of Heather's last days of life as a witness and victim of the attacker, who miraculously survived a shot to the head rather than as a suspect. During these days, no other witnesses of their activity existed. The position of the house helped with this. It was a remote location since it at the end of a dead end. The attackers targeted the victims between December 23rd and December 24th, according to the police officials. Ryan, as before, had gaps in his memory, thus he could not completely undo the whole series of events. Richie was the target of his pointing, but the suspect denied guilt. At the scene of the catastrophe, Richie found no evidence contradicting him. Every hope rested in the memory of the one who survived. The reason appeared to be understandable. The young people lacked any valuable items for the assailant to wish to rob the helpless couple of students with a weapon. The events had to be rebuilt gradually. Though Ryan was released from the hospital after a month, neurosurgeons thought he was still in the process of recovery. They thus hoped that he would still be able to assist the research by later recall of some details. This actually happened a few hours later, when the young man's condition somewhat improved. His memories tell us that Heather and he woke up in the apartment early on December 24th. Their daily life was as usual. Everyone was in great mood on the eve of the Christmas holidays. The lovers also planned to celebrate the girl's birthday and Christmas at the guy's family. Ryan recalled spending morning hours in the kitchen with his girlfriend. Heather knocked at the door suddenly, though this seemed odd to them, and they were not expecting guests. Ryan went to check who had arrived at the door. He saw his former neighbor Richie and his father Larry carrying weapons as he opened the door. Though he lacked time, he tried to shut the door. The assailants fired in his left eye. He tumbled and passed out. The two guys went to the next room, where the girl was seated on the couch. They went on attack and shot Heather. From the apartment, Richie and Larry pilfered some valuables and a computer. The survivor recalled that the former neighbor harbored great envy of him. For the unaided eye, it was obvious. They argued often, including about Heather. Ryan thus advised that he move out. He wanted to connect with his girlfriend in addition to rid the troublesome neighbor. Richie left the elderly neighbor on a hostile note, greatly offended. Though Ryan's account sounded rather reasonable, the police officials could not specifically identify the source of the attack, confirming it only would come from the criminal. Given some things and a computer really vanished from the house, the official version sounded like robbery. Above all, Richie had an accomplice called Larry. His biological father turned out to be. One assumed they wanted to steal something. However, it is not excluded that revenge drove most of this intrusion into the house. Richie allegedly visited his old house often, argued with Ryan, and even threatened him, according to several witnesses. Ryan, though, did not give his warnings any thought. Against all the expectations, he and his father decided to break in. Everyone carried a gun for fight. Ryan sadly couldn't recall whether his attempt to drive out the intruders caused the gunshot at Heather and himself. Consequently, it was unclear whether this robbery went off, after which the shooting started, or the intruders first broke in here intending murder. Since Ryan and Heather were unarmed, and the attackers began firing straight from the doorstep, the second version seemed more likely at some point. The forensic expert concluded that Heather passed away right away following her gunshot. She most likely was thrown aside as an unwelcome witness. Ryan was far more lucky, since the bullet merely caused him to pass out since it could not pass far into the brain. The attackers most likely concluded he was dead and left. Nobody brought the injured to completion. The intruders left the scene of the tragedy after grabbing the first valuables that came to hand. They moved fast, thus it took literally a few minutes. Ryan, meantime, stayed unconscious for several hours. His brain suffered and he lost awareness of what was around him once he came to his senses. He even considered Heather not bothered since she was simply resting on the couch. Not knowing what had happened, he himself went to bed and slept most of the evening. For Ryan, the time intervals thus proved to be even more horrific than they appeared. For many hours he lay unconscious in the apartment close to the dead girl. He spent further 5 hours in a patrol car following police arrival. The questioning went for several hours until the police officer at last observed Ryan was actually injured and required assistance. Since then, every minute counted, and he had not received emergency help for roughly 7 hours. Why Detective Paul Dalton missed a gunshot wound in the main suspect right away remained a mystery. Besides, the injured man told him about it. Furthermore horrible was his continuous disregard of his behavior. Every person who interacted with Ryan realized something was wrong with him. The guidelines state that in such circumstances, a police officer is required to seek assistance for a medical examination. But Paul Dalton insisted this time that he felt they were trying to fool him until very last. Ryan was acting highly suspiciously. Up until her death, he was the only person Heather saw. The apartment seemed to be empty except from one other. Furthermore, such events are usually connected to the closest people. Thus it was clear why he started to be a suspect. It should be mentioned that this material was gathered just following Ryan's discharge. Richie and his father Larry, two bloodthirsty killers, thus kept on prowling free for at least a month. Simultaneously, the detectives essentially did not interact with Ryan during his hospital recovery. Though both were well known in criminal circles, miraculously the murderers refrained from launching fresh attacks. True, they never had any comparable violent outbursts, let alone murders, prior to this event. Of course, the killers had no idea Ryan was miraculously surviving this attack. Since there were major worries that the thugs might resurface and eliminate the only witness able to place them behind bars, the police officials did not reveal this information and statistics regarding the survivor. At last, Richie and Larry were arrested and taken under custody. Along with 2 revolvers, they discovered some of the pilfers from Ryan's apartment. Later, it was discovered Richie shot Ryan and Larry shot Heather using ballistic examination. Richie ultimately found himself charged with murder, burglary, aggravated assault, and illegal weapon use. He got life in prison without a right to parole. His father likewise came out guilty. His wife first claimed he told her he killed the couple, but later he became afraid and refused to testify in front of court supporting the prosecution. Actually, Larry's own mother testified against him without fearing. The office of the prosecutor had more than enough evidence proving guilt. The man was guilty of first-degree murder, aggravated assault, and robbery, according to the jury. Additionally sentenced to life in prison without the right to parole was he. Don, Ryan's father, sued the Phoenix Police Department a few years following the murder convictions. For years the man watched his only son suffer. Following the attack and police encounter, he developed seizures, cognitive problems, and regular headache. Desperate to prove, Don accused Paul Dalton of fabricating evidence and building his own interpretations of the case. As it transpired, the investigator had a dubious professional background. He not always followed the guidelines. Ryan missed the outcomes of these hearings, unfortunately. Along with part of his brain, the man lost his left eye. He suffered much from this. He was totally dependent on his parents and could not lead a normal life. 10 years after the attack, on January 20, 2016, the guy who miraculously survived a shot to the head and police pressure died from one of the seizures. He dropped and suffered a brain damage that proved fatal. Naturally, the local media took note of this whole depressing scenario. But Ryan's mother and father stayed away from reporters. Don conducted only one interview, discussing his attempts to obtain justice for his son. He was sure Detective Dalton had killed his son, so completing what the attackers could not have accomplished. The result of this matter is yet unknown. Therefore, sadly, this horrific tale about the murder of Heather Kwan and the attempt on Ryan Waller's life is not unique. It powerfully shows how quickly someone's anger, jealousy, and cruelty can shorten young life. Apparently driven by self-interest and revenge, Ryan's former neighbor Richie and his father Larry mistreated the defenseless couple violently. The most bizarre aspect of this narrative, though, is the actions of Detective Paul Dalton, who almost brought the only witness of the crime, the injured Ryan, to death out of prejudice and incapacity to grasp the circumstances. Ryan might have avoided such severe consequences and lived longer if the police officer had paid attention in time to the clear indicators of a major injury and given the young man the required medical help. When we sum up this sad tale, we can bitterly say that it is a clear illustration of how human cruelty, envy, and anger can shorten young lives full of aspirations and hopes. Ryan Waller and Heather Kwan fell victims of a senseless and sneaky crime carried out by Ryan's father Larry and former neighbor Richie, most likely driven by a need for vengeance and enrichment. These merciless and heartless individuals broke into the house of the loving couple and shot them. The behavior of Detective Paul Dalton, who almost brought the only witness of the crime, the wounded Ryan Waller, to death due to his prejudice, unprofessionalism, and unwillingness to grasp the circumstances, is the most ridiculous and unfair thing in this story, though. Ignoring the clear indicators of a serious head injury, the detective subjected Ryan to a rigorous and taxing questioning instead of giving the young man the required medical attention and thorough questioning. Perhaps Ryan would not have suffered from such severe consequences and would have lived longer, not dying 10 years later from complications, if Paul Dalton had timely fulfilled his professional obligation and given the injured man appropriate medical treatment. All of us should be reminded of the great responsibility law enforcement personnel carry for the life and destinies of individuals by this sad tale. We give them our safety and protection. Thus, we have the right to expect from them professionalism, objectivity, and legal observance. Sadly, as Ryan Waller's case shows, errors and mistreatment in the operations of law enforcement agencies are rather common and can have fatal results. Society has to come to sensible conclusions from this catastrophe and do all possible to guarantee that such a thing never resurfaces. We have to insist on justice, openness, and responsibility from the legal system, as well as great professionalism, integrity, and respect of human rights from law enforcement personnel. Only under such circumstances will we be able to create a safe and compassionate society whereby every life is appreciated and crimes are not tolerated without penalty. Let the untimely death of Ryan Waller and the sad death of Heather Kwan serve as a reminder to all of us about the frailty of human life and the need of safeguarding each other. And those guilty in this horrible tale, the killers Richie and Larry, as well as the dishonest investigator Paul Dalton, must pay a fair and severe sentence for their transgressions. To sum up, I want to thank you for your attention and concern. Subscribe to the Denzel Crime channel if you want further knowledge about high-profile crimes, their investigation, and human destinies, and are intrigued in this narrative. Many fascinating, dramatic, and instructive tales abound here that will cause you to consider the age-old questions of good and evil, justice and mercy. Join our community of like-minded individuals that see the force of truth and the certainty of punishment. Working together, we can somewhat improve the safety and compassion in our planet. I appreciate your caring.